Chapter 465. The blood-red palm soared through the air, accompanied by the rumbling of a stormy sea. The palm, which blotted out the sky, ruthlessly swatted at Buffon. The air around it emitted an oppressive wail. The Netherworld woman quickly dodged the attack and stood in the distance. She coldly looked at Buffon, who was like a small boat in front of the blood-red palm. With Buffon's cultivation, he wouldn't be able to block this palm. He would surely die. However, just when she thought that Buffon would surely die, brightly colored specks of light suddenly appeared above Buffon's head. Those specks of light were densely packed, and they scattered in all directions like a group of fireflies. The speck of light turned into a thread, from which a crack could be seen slowly emerging. The sound of something being torn apart could be heard as the crack split apart. A furry dog's paw quietly stretched out from it. The blood-red palm had already reached its pinnacle, and it blew at Buffon's hair, causing it to flutter. The dense smell of blood almost stained Buffon's body. The man covered in blood was confident because he knew that if nothing unexpected happened, his palm would surely kill this kid. The Netherworld woman was clearly aware of the man covered in blood's cultivation. He was at the peak of the divine physique echelon, who had broken through 5 supreme being shackles. Although he hadn't reached the great circle of the spiritual divine protection realm, killing a supreme being like Buffon, who hadn't even broken through the shackles, was as easy as blowing off dust for him. He would surely die. She was now thinking of waiting for this kid to die so that she could retrieve the crystal source purple essence. That thing was extremely important to her. Previously, it was because of that dog. Now that the dog wasn't here, she naturally wouldn't let go of the crystal source purple essence. However, she was quickly astonished by what she saw. The exquisite dog's paw that stretched out from the crack wasn't big. It was furry and incomparably small. However, the Netherworld woman got goosebumps all over her body when she saw such a small and delicate dog paw. Buffon widened his eyes as he looked at the dog's paw. He was somewhat delighted. It was Blackie. As expected, it was that lazy dog Blackie. Sure enough, it had arrived. The dog's paw was small, but its power was terrifying. The bloody palm that was slapping down suddenly seemed to be blocked by an invisible force, unable to suppress it in the slightest. The bloody man's eyes widened. He felt the pressure of heaven and earth. That pressure actually forcibly pushed aside his pressure. But an invisible ripple spread out, and in the next instant, the bloody palm was sent flying. It was smacked by the dog's paw and dissipated, turning into blood that filled the sky. The blood on the man's body began to boil. He retreated a few steps with a sinister expression as he looked down in disbelief. That kid is so strong? No, it was definitely not that kid. What was that thing? In this secret realm, could it be that there are existences at the peak of the divine physique echelon? Or could it be an existence above the divine body realm? The bloody aura gradually dissipated, revealing the scene below. The bloody man stared at him. The Netherworld woman was also watching in shock. The dog's paw was raised slightly, and it reached out from the tiny crack. It was this claw that caused the monstrous blood palm to shrink back. A dog's paw? The thing that repelled the palm of a peak divine body realm expert was actually such a small dog's paw? The bloody man's gaze became strange, and the corners of his mouth twitched. I finally made it in time, a somewhat lazy voice echoed out. The crack became bigger, and gradually, a figure gracefully walked out of it. That figure wasn't human. It was walking on all fours, and it was walking with graceful, cat-like steps. Wait, cat-like steps? Wasn't that a dog's paw? How could it be cat-like steps? The bloody man felt as if his brain couldn't process the situation properly. He squinted his eyes as he looked at the figure that was gradually becoming clearer. It was a dog. It was a black, fat dog. It was walking with cat-like steps, and its fat body was trembling. It was a dog. Could it be that the thing that blocked his attack was actually this dog? The Netherworld woman looked at the Lord Go's figure, which was gradually becoming clearer, and her stiff face froze for a moment. It was extremely strange. because she realized that this dog seemed to be different from the dog she remembered. When she was in the netherworld, she had seen that dog once. That dog wasn't as fat. The Lord Ghost shook its body, and its fat body trembled. The corners of Bu Fang's mouth curled up, and the true energy in his body quickly retreated. He felt a wave of weakness wash over him. He took out an oyster pancake and bit into it. As soon as the oyster pancake entered his stomach, it turned into true energy, and he gradually felt his strength returning. Bu Fang, you brat. The Lord Go told you to keep the crystal source purple essence. Did you keep it? It must have been difficult for you to snatch it from the netherworld girl. Now that the Lord Go is here, let's hand it over to the Lord Go for safekeeping. The Lord Go stuck out his tongue as he stared at Bu Fang and spoke impatiently. Bu Fang's face was expressionless. He was wondering why this lazy dog would rush over so diligently. It turned out that it was for food. The netherworld woman is still behind you. Is it really okay for you to say that? The netherworld woman's face was ice cold at this moment. I didn't expect that you would have a helper. However, what can a dog do? The man covered in blood suppressed the shock in his heart. There was a divine realm prawn and a divine realm puppet, and now there was a divine realm dog. It wasn't strange at all. Since Bu Fang had so many helpers, it seemed like his status wasn't ordinary. However, no matter how extraordinary he was still in his territory. He was the one who controlled life and death. The man covered in blood said coldly, his voice filled with killing intent. The Lord Go was taken aback. He turned his head around and looked at the man covered in blood. Who was this person? He seemed really powerful. His whole body was covered in blood, and his aura was extremely powerful. The 5 blood-colored shackles behind him swayed, and his aura soared into the sky. Did he sever 5 shackles? It was no wonder that Bu Fang was in such a sorry state. Although he had some fighting prowess now, and he had the help of that iron lump, Xiao Bai, he was still far from being able to fight against someone at the peak of the divine physique echelon. Ever since I was sealed in the Shura Tower, I haven't eaten dog meat for a long time. This dog came at the right time. Let me savor the taste of dog meat. The man covered in blood sneered. He raised his hand, and blood gathered and formed a spear. Eat dog meat? Bu Fang was stunned. The netherworld woman was also stunned. The fat on the Lord Go's face trembled. Did a dog provoke you? Why did he eat dog meat? The man covered in blood surged with true energy. He raised his spear, and the tip of the spear started to spin. It emitted terrifying fluctuations as it swept out. However, just as he was about to smash the spear, he was stunned. His target had disappeared. No, he didn't disappear. His target appeared less than a meter away from him. What was going on? The man covered in blood was stunned. In the next moment, he saw the plump dog raise its paw. As the dog raised its paw, it constantly expanded and turned into a gigantic palm that covered the sky. Bang! The spear was broken, and the man covered in blood was ruthlessly smashed into the bottom of the tower. The entire space trembled. Eat dog meat? You actually want to eat such a noble piece of meat? There are so many types of meat in the world, but you insist on eating dog meat? Tell me, are you courting death? The fat on the Lord Go's face trembled. The netherworld woman pouted when she saw this. Fine, this coquettish style was indeed that dog's doing. It was just that. How did that slender dog of the past become so fat? Bu Fang rubbed his chin as he looked at the plump Lord Go. He smacked his lips. It seemed like the food in his store was too good. When he first met the Lord Go, he was still a handsome and slim dog. After seeing the Lord Go's paw, Bu Fang calmed down a lot. He grabbed the oyster pancake with one hand and slurped it down as he stood up and walked toward the phoenix egg. You guys can continue fighting. I want to take a look at the phoenix egg first. That damn dog. The man covered in blood soared into the sky, and his body soared into the sky. Countless drops of blood formed a sea of blood behind him. His eyes were bloodshot, and his killing intent soared to the sky as he glared at the plump black dog. Crunch! A crisp sound echoed as Bu Fang easily broke off the bone, metamorphosing dragon grass growing around the phoenix egg. The sound of the grass roots cracking was so clear in the silent space. The man covered in blood stiffened, and when he turned his head, he saw this scene. He immediately flew into a rage. He was so angry that he vomited blood. Chapter 466. The bone metamorphosing dragon grass resembled a divine dragon that was about to soar into the sky. Its wriggling body was filled with a mystical aura. It was enveloped by a hazy radiance and emitted a fragrant aroma. With a cracking sound, the verdant bone metamorphosing dragon grass was forcefully snapped by Bufong. It seemed as though a dragon roar resounded. Bufong weighed the spirit herb in his hand, and the corners of his mouth curled up. As expected of a level 10 spirit herb, just the smell of its rich essence and spiritual energy made one feel refreshed, as if one's mind had become much clearer. After storing the bone metamorphosing dragon grass into the system's dimensional storage, Bufong let out a sigh of relief. The system's temporary task was finally completed. He thought that it would be an easy task, but he didn't expect that it would be so difficult. Congratulations to the host for completing the temporary task. Enter the Cloud Sea Secret Realm and pick the Heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup ingredient, the bone metamorphosing dragon grass. The task reward will be issued after storing the bone metamorphosing dragon grass. The system's solemn voice resounded in Bufong's mind. Bufong was looking forward to the task reward. The 20% origin energy conversion reward would allow Bufong's cultivation to advance further. However, it wasn't strange. This task was extremely difficult, so it was natural for the reward to be generous. The man covered in blood looked at Bufong, who was leisurely snapping the bone metamorphosing dragon grass, and the blood in his eyes became even more intense. This ant-like human really infuriated him to death. At this moment, he was somewhat regretful. Why didn't he slap this fellow to death earlier? He didn't want him to keep jumping around in front of him and disgust him. The Netherworld woman was also speechless as she looked at Bufong. This weak human is really calm. The man covered in blood with 5 severed shackles wasn't dead yet he was already plundering the spoils of war. Couldn't he show some respect to someone at the peak of the divine physique echelon? The man covered in blood was extremely angry, and the blood in his body was boiling. Lord Go tilted his head as he looked at the man covered in blood and snorted. Lord Go was very clear about Bufong's temperament. That calm look of his would make anyone want to beat him up. However, Lord Go was already used to it. So, as long as Bufong wasn't eating sweet and sour ribs beside him, Lord Go wouldn't care much. As if sensing the bloody man's murderous gaze, Bufong calmly raised his head and looked at the bloody man who was about to spurt out blood. Then, Bufong did not pay too much attention to it. He broke off a new bone metamorphosing dragon grass with a cracking sound. The blood man was seething with anger. This was going too far. Bufong's infuriating look made the bloody man's anger surge unceasingly. His blood surged, turning into a vast sea that roared behind him. So much blood, it was simply shocking. Facing the monstrous sea of blood, Lord Go floated in the air. He was so small that he seemed like an unremarkable speck of dust. With a roar, the blood converged into a huge mouth that bit at Lord Go. It wanted to swallow Lord Go completely. Lord Go calmly looked at the sea of blood that seemed to engulf heaven and earth. Looking at the blood that was unceasingly approaching, the smell of blood spread out and filled the entire space. The bloody man crazily roared. His aura revolved to the extreme, and his true energy boiled to the extreme. Just as the sea of blood was about to swallow Lord Go, Blackie, who had been motionless, suddenly opened its mouth. The dog's mouth instantly enlarged, and it aimed at the encroaching sea of blood and barked loudly. It was incomparably loud and deafening. The sea of blood exploded with this dog's bark. Bang, bang, bang. Huge waves rose in the sea of blood. Pillars of blood were smashed and continuously exploded. Then, the sea of blood swept back with a terrifying momentum. The bloody man was frightened. He didn't expect that plump dog to be so terrifying. A dog's bark made his sea of blood roll back. A buzzing sound rang out. Lord Go strode out with his enchanting cat-like steps. In just a flash, he crossed the sea of blood and appeared in front of the bloody man. Lord Go didn't have a good impression of the bloody man. It was the first time they met, and this guy was already shouting that he wanted to eat dog meat. Did he want to eat dog meat in front of Lord Go? Wasn't he courting death? The dog's paw rose again. It suddenly expanded and pressed down, bringing with it a terrifying gust of wind. The bloody man howled. His hair fluttered, and his entire body's strength swept out. He wanted to block that palm. Bang! However, the illusionary void seemed to explode. The bloody man felt an unparalleled power pouring into his arms. That power was like a towering mountain pressing down on him. He couldn't resist it at all. Once again, he was smashed to the bottom of the tower. He was like a rubber ball that had been smacked away. Blackie wagged its tail in the illusionary void and continued to stride out with its enchanting cat-like steps. It was as if it was walking on an invisible flight of stairs. Bufong snapped the last bone, metamorphosing dragon grass, and stored it in the system's dimensional storage. He turned his head and looked at the bloody man who was lying at the bottom of the tower. He was like a pool of stagnant water. His eyes flashed. Then, his gaze once again fell on the phoenix egg, which was emitting a bright radiance. This egg was filled with rich essence. When Bufong approached it, he could feel the surging life, force, and spirit energy coming from it. Bufong's heart was filled with surprise and joy. This was the most awesome egg he had ever encountered. It was also the most awesome ingredient he had ever encountered. If this egg was used to make a delicacy, it would definitely be an excellent dish. Actually, using this egg as an ingredient for the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup wasn't a bad idea. However, Bufong felt that it would be a waste. This was because other ingredients couldn't match up to this egg. It would be too wasteful. The phoenix egg belongs to me. Just when Bufong was pondering what kind of dish he should use this phoenix egg to make, an ice-cold voice suddenly rang out from behind him. It was the Netherworld woman's voice. Bufong had heard it before, so he had an impression of it. The woman looked at Bufong indifferently. It seemed like a wisp of killing intent was lingering around Bufong's body. As long as Bufong dared to take another step forward, he would be killed. Bufong furrowed his brows. This woman wanted the phoenix egg? What do you want the egg for? Bufong asked in a serious manner. The Netherworld woman looked at Bufong and remained silent for a moment. Then, she explained it out of respect for the Lord Go. The phoenix egg's essence can expel the deathly energy and curse from my body. Expel the deathly energy? Bufong was taken aback. He carefully looked at the woman and discovered that there were wisps of black energy flowing around her body. That should be the so-called deathly energy. So, if you obtain this egg, how will you deal with it? Do you know how to cook it? Bufong asked. The Netherworld woman was taken aback. How will I deal with it? What I need is the egg's essence. Why do I have to cook it? Can't I just lick it? That's what I've always done. Lick to absorb essence energy and suppress the deathly energy. It's such a simple thing. So why do I have to make it so complicated? When Bufong saw the bewildered look on the woman's face, he immediately became interested. I can tell with one look that you don't cook often. It's hard for you to experience the joy of delicious food by fighting and killing. Such a high-quality ingredient must be prepared with high-quality methods. Only then will you be worthy of it. Do you know how many methods there are to prepare an egg? The Netherworld woman's face was ice-cold. She was dumbfounded. There are many ways to prepare an egg. The simplest way is to boil it. It retains the egg's original taste and essence. The creamy white will definitely make you feel intoxicated. When the topic of food came up, Bufong couldn't help but become more talkative. Aside from the simplest boiled egg, there are also poached eggs, tea eggs, braised eggs, and so on. Of course, there are even more advanced ways to prepare it, such as mixed cooking, egg-fried rice, egg custard, and so on. Bufong listed out many ways to prepare eggs in a single breath, causing the Netherworld woman to become dumbfounded. Tell me, how do you plan to prepare it? Poached eggs? Or tea eggs? Bufong's eyes lit up as he stared at the Netherworld woman. I'll lick it. The Netherworld woman squeezed out these words after a long time. Bufong was taken aback. His face became expressionless as he squinted his eyes and looked at her. His gaze was filled with disdain. The Netherworld woman started to doubt her life. Lick it. Do you know how much essence, energy you will waste by doing this? If you give me the egg, I will definitely let you experience the pleasure of having your essence energy cleanse your body. Bufong said. The Netherworld woman remained expressionless. When Lord Go heard Bufong's words from afar, he almost laughed out loud. He didn't expect that Bufong would also learn how to swindle people. Only the Netherworld woman was pure and easy to swindle. Bang! The ground shook and the entire Shura Tower started to shake. Blood energy gathered in the sky and poured into the body of the man covered in blood. At the bottom of the tower, the man covered in blood slowly crawled up. The aura emanating from his body was extremely terrifying, and there seemed to be traces of blood pulsing on his body. He recognized how powerful Lord Go was. The man covered in blood knew that he wasn't a match for this plump dog. He felt somewhat sullen. He had swept through the Cloud Sea secret realm, but he never expected that he would be defeated by a dog. He wasn't willing to accept this. Fortunately, he still had a trump card up his sleeve. He wanted to turn this dog into a dead dog. He wanted to cut off the meat from its body piece by piece and tear it apart. The Shura Tower was awakened. Tens of thousands of drops of blood gathered in the center of the man covered in blood's palm, forming a scarlet drop of blood. That drop of blood was filled with tyrannical energy. The eyes of the man covered in blood were ice cold and filled with killing intent. He coldly looked at the Lord Go and swept his gaze over Bufong. In the next instant, he ruthlessly pressed the scarlet drop of blood into the bottom of the tower. The sound of something shattering suddenly resounded. The drop of blood splashed out, and it looked like a pool of blood had split open, slowly spreading outwards. At the bottom of the tower, blood patterns started to flicker. Those patterns were extremely strange and mysterious. In just a short while, blood covered the entire floor and spread throughout the entire tower. The slightly transparent walls of the tower were filled with patterns, and it seemed as though the entire tower had awoken. It gave off a completely different kind of oppressive aura. The Shura Tower was the divine tool of the ancient Shura city. Since it could be called a divine tool, it naturally possessed a terrifying might. The man covered in blood let out a long howl. The translucent blood tower suddenly became solid. The walls of the tower became firm, and it gradually took on the appearance of a tower. The man covered in blood felt as though his mind was completely connected with the Shura Tower, and his mind became incomparably powerful. The feeling of controlling a divine tool was truly indescribable. Although this divine tool was broken, the man covered in blood believed that it was enough for him to slaughter the plump dog in front of him. Because of the Shura Tower's amplification, he felt as though he had entered the realm of spiritual divinity. He had truly reached the peak of the divine physique echelon. A dog wasn't worth mentioning. Chapter 467. The Shura Tower had been revived. After drinking an ocean of blood, the dilapidated Shura Tower finally regained some of its power. Although it was still broken, the pressure it emitted was incomparably powerful. The scarlet blood on the bloody man's body also gradually dissipated. Then, a blood-red face was revealed. The facial features on that face were constantly changing, as if it was formed by countless souls. At the opening of the crack, a drenched figure crawled in. It was the heavily injured Misha. Misha's eyes widened as he looked at the bloody man. This was the first time he saw the bloody man's face. Or rather, it was one of the faces that were constantly changing. That face wasn't unfamiliar to him. It could even be said that it left a deep impression on him. That face belonged to none other than Duan Ling, who had stolen a piece of the Shura Tower. Wasn't Duan Ling already dead? He died in the Grand Baron Sek's backward training ground. The ancient Shura city had already confirmed this news. However, the bloody man's face was Duan Ling's face. Buzz, 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 the bloody man was roaring. Although his face was constantly changing, his eyes didn't change. His gaze was still the same. The fat on the Lord Go's face twitched. He also felt that something was amiss. He clearly remembered that Duan Ling was smashed into pieces by his paw. He couldn't be more dead. Why did he appear in front of him again? Moreover, Duan Ling didn't seem to remember him. In the netherworld ship, Nangong Wuk finally crawled out of the cabin with great difficulty and climbed onto the deck. An unparalleled pressure pressed down on his body, making it extremely difficult for him to crawl forward. Nangong Wuk, who had just climbed onto the deck, saw the bloody man. At this moment, the bloody man seemed to have become the center of the world. Countless streams of energy gathered at his location. Although the bloody man's face was constantly changing, Nangong Wuk's pupils shrank. He was shocked beyond words, not because of anything else, but because one of the faces was very familiar to him. "Father!" Nangong Wuk shouted in alarm. It was Nangong Wangtian's face. The face of the fallen Nangong Wangtian. Could it be that his father was still alive? Nangong Wuk thought in disbelief. However, his lively heart quickly turned cold. He discovered that the bloody man did not have any trace of Nangong Wangtian's aura. The feeling the bloody man gave him was that of a stranger, a very strange one. How could this be? Bufong seemed to have heard Nangong Wuk's roar. He stopped talking about the netherworld woman and turned his head to look in the direction of the netherworld ship. He immediately saw Nangong Wuk sprawled on the deck, his clothes in a disheveled state. Nangong Wuk? Bufong was surprised. The netherworld woman's pitch-black eyes turned, and her gaze landed on Nangong Wuk. Her aura turned cold. "Go back." Nangong Wuk, who was struggling to crawl out, immediately felt a wave of energy acting on his body. He was pulled back into the cabin by this force. "Don't be like this. Let me take a breath of fresh air." When Nangong Wuk came back to his senses, his heart was filled with despair. His face was filled with despair as he stretched out his hand to grab the deck. However, the force was too strong, and it flung him back into the cabin. Bufong raised his brows in surprise and looked at the netherworld woman with a strange expression. What was this woman trying to do? Was she trying to imprison that clown, Nangong Wuk? Could it be that this woman had taken a fancy to Nangong Wuk and wanted to make him her husband? No, that shouldn't be the case. Perhaps this woman just didn't like Nangong Wuk. After all, that clown Nangong Wuk deserved a beating. Sometimes, Bufong even wanted to stamp the soles of his shoes on his face. "Treat him well. He's a good man," Bufong said earnestly after thinking for a moment. The netherworld woman glanced at Bufong expressionlessly. However, Bufong still saw a trace of bewilderment in her eyes. "Shut up," the netherworld woman said coldly. Bufong felt as though the netherworld woman's pale face had turned slightly black. "Fine. Let's discuss how to eat the phoenix egg. Actually, making steamed meat with eggs isn't a bad choice. It's nutritious, healthy, and delicious." The corners of Bufong's mouth curled up as he spoke. Lord Go yawned as he looked at the bloody man, who had stood up once again and was absorbing boundless energy. To be more accurate, this person wasn't a human. With Lord Go's experience, he could tell with a single glance that there was something strange about this bloody man. This fellow was probably the appearance of the Shura Tower's tool spirit after it absorbed two soul essences. After Duan Ling was smashed to pieces, he was captured by a small black tower and turned into a remnant of his soul. That small black tower was probably the Shura Tower. Crack, the bloody scab condensed, and the Shura Tower shot out rays of light that formed a flickering blood-red armor on the bloody man's body. The armor made the bloody man's tall and straight body even more conspicuous. "Bastard, go to hell." The bloody man glared at Bufong, and his aura soared into the sky. Spiritual energy rippled around him, and the 5 blood-red chains swayed and collided with each other. Swoosh! A blood-red ray of light flashed past. The armored bloody man appeared in front of Lord Go. He punched out. This punch contained the bloody man's formidable strength, and it seemed as though the air was being crushed. Did it become faster? Lord Dog rolled his eyes. He looked at the fist that whistled through the air, causing the fat on his face to tremble. He exclaimed in surprise. The bloody man coldly snorted, and his gaze was ice-cold as his killing, intense sword. Bang! The fist smashed into the space where Lord Go was standing, and it exploded. Energy wreaked havoc in that space, causing the air to shatter. My punch missed. The bloody man felt that something was amiss. His body floated in the air, and his face kept changing. Sometimes it turned into Duan Ling's sinister face, and sometimes it turned into Nangong Wangtian's heroic face. Lord Go gracefully walked like a cat and appeared not far away. He calmly looked at the bloody man. The bloody man's speed was already extremely fast, reaching 3 times the speed of sound. His punch was even faster. However, Lord Go still managed to dodge it. After obtaining the Shura Tower's amplification, the bloody man became much stronger. The bloody man didn't believe that he couldn't deal with a dog today. He roared, and a series of sonic booms resounded in the air. Then a bloody light shot out and smashed into the air. The air in the Shura Tower became extremely chaotic. The raging wind blew, blowing at Lord Go's unhurried body, and his fat wobbled. The bloody man attacked crazily, and Lord Go gracefully walked like a cat. However, the bloody man's punch was dodged every time. It was really strange. The bloody man's speed was fast, but Lord Go was even faster. His speed didn't match the fat dog's figure at all. Bang! All of a sudden, the direction in which the blood-red light was flying changed. It smashed into the bottom of the Shura Tower, causing the entire Shura Tower to shake. Lord Go raised his exquisite paw and rolled his eyes. "Do you think I'm playing hide-and-seek with you? Don't you feel annoyed?" As soon as he finished speaking, Lord Go raised his palm and smashed it towards the bloody man's position. Boom! The ground shook, and the Shura Tower let out a wail, as if it couldn't withstand the attack. It seemed like it was about to collapse. The bloody man crawled up for the ground once again. The armor on his body had been shattered into tiny pieces, and it seemed like it was about to shatter. Lord Go's 2 palms made him question his life. Poochie! The blood energy on the bloody man's body was rapidly dispersing and evaporating. Buzz! A buzzing sound could be heard. Bu Fong felt the Shura Tower tremble, and in the next instant, it started to shrink. In the end, it turned into a small tower, which was held in the bloody man's palm. This dog was too terrifying. The bloody man was in despair. He could only place his hopes on the Shura Tower. He hoped that the divine tool Shura Tower could suppress this dog. Using all of his strength, the bloody man smashed the Shura Tower toward Lord Go's head. The Shura Tower rumbled, and its blood energy spread out. Its power was boundless, and the space seemed to distort. The power of this move had already surpassed the realm of the divine physique echelon. It was absolutely terrifying. The divine tool's power was really strong. Lord Go narrowed his eyes, and his mouth twitched. Then the fur on his body started to flutter. Divine tool? Even if it was a real divine tool, Lord Go wouldn't fear it, let alone a broken toy. I, Lord Go, have slept for so long. Did you think that I grew fat for nothing? I will let you see a small ability that Lord Go has recovered. Lord Go's gentle and magnetic voice reverberated. In the next instant, Lord Go's gaze changed. Bu Fong and the Netherworld woman raised their heads at the same time as they sensed something and looked at Lord Dog. At this moment, the Lord Go seemed to have turned into a pitch-black hole, and it was constantly absorbing light. A dog's bark, which seemed to have come from ancient times, echoed out. In the pitch-black darkness, a white crack appeared. That crack was located in between the Lord Go's eyebrows, and it looked like an eye had split open. Sizzle! When the color white reached its peak, darkness would appear. A beam of ice-cold black light suddenly shot out from the vertical eye that had split open. A loud, tearing sound resounded, and it sounded like a bolt of lightning had struck out of the blue. Rumbling sounds echoed out. The speed of the black light was so fast that it was hard for people to see it. In an instant, it appeared above the Shura Tower that the man covered in blood had just thrown out. The divine tool, Shura Tower, trembled, and it seemed like it was trying to shoot out some energy. However, it was all in vain. The Shura Tower's energy exploded, and the black light smashed into the Shura Tower. The Shura Tower couldn't bear the heavy blow, and it was directly smashed into pieces. A cracking sound rang out, and the man covered in blood was dumbstruck. The Shura tower exploded, and it turned into 3 fragments. This shit. The Shura tower was originally formed by 2 fragments. So how did it get smashed into pieces? The man covered in blood was dumbstruck, and what frightened him even more was that the fluctuations of the black light were so powerful that they shook his body, and the blood armor covering his body exploded. His whole body turned into a mist of blood, and it scattered. 2 miserable howls resounded, and they turned into 2 remnant souls that soared into the sky. A sky-covering dog's paw suddenly appeared in the sky above the 2 soul essences. With a loud rumble, the 2 soul essences were collected, and they were thrown into the dog's mouth. Burp! The Lord Ghost smacked his lips and burped. His face was filled with disdain. Bufong's sweet and sour ribs is still the best. Chapter 468. Ate it. Misha, who was at the exit of the crevice, widened his eyes in shock as he looked at the scene in front of him. He couldn't believe what he had just seen. It was as if he had just seen the most terrifying scene in the world. That incomparably valiant man who had broken through 5 of the Supreme Being's shackles and had even awakened the Shura Tower and reached the spiritual divine defense realm. He was killed by a dog with a single slap and swallowed alive. How could there be such a terrifying dog in this world? Where did this dog come from? The peak of the divine physique echelon. Even in the ancient Shura city, a person with such strength would be considered a peak expert. However, Misha felt as if he wasn't looking at a dog, but a demon. A demon wearing a dog's skin. The most important thing was the Shura Tower. The awakened Shura Tower was actually destroyed by this dog with a single slap. That was a divine tool. The divine tool that guarded the ancient Shura city. Although it was broken, its might was definitely not ordinary. Misha's entire body trembled. Without any hesitation, Misha turned around and crawled out of the crevice. He wanted to escape from this place. This world was too terrifying. Blackie licked its lips in the air and bared its fangs. With a groan, it landed on the ground. With a wave of its paw, the 3 fragments of the Shura Tower flew into its paw. The 3 fragments of the Shura Tower had already lost their luster, and one couldn't see the might of a divine tool at all. The Lord Go narrowed its eyes and threw the 3 fragments of the Shura Tower on the ground. Bufong was somewhat puzzled. What was this plump dog trying to do? Could it be that it wanted to eat the tower? Was it really that deranged? However, it was obvious that the Lord Go didn't want to eat the tower. Instead, it leaped up and used its paw to step on the Shura Tower on the ground. A series of rumbling sounds resounded. It was as if a huge force had ruthlessly smashed down on the Shura Tower, causing it to distort and deform. The Lord Go crazily stomped on the Shura Tower, and with every step, the fat on the Lord Go's body jiggled. Bufong was speechless. This dog is crazy. What kind of grudge does he have? Regardless of Little Black's funny behavior, Bufong turned to look at the phoenix egg. Without the Shura Tower's restriction, the phoenix egg shone with a dazzling radiance. Vigorous essence energy constantly gushed out from the phoenix egg, filling the entire space. The Netherworld woman took several steps forward and approached the phoenix egg. Her charming face was almost touching the egg's shell as she greedily breathed in. She was absorbing the essence energy flowing out of the phoenix egg. That essence energy allowed her spirit, energy, and spirit to recover by a large margin. The pitch-black death aura circulating around his body was suppressed. Bufong was also amazed. The essence energy overflowing from this phoenix egg was even denser than the blood crown of the black swamp boa. One must know that the blood crown was condensed from the essence of the black swamp boa. As expected of a phoenix egg, Bufong stretched out his hand and patted the eggshell. A warm feeling spread out from the eggshell and instantly spread to his whole body. It made Bufong feel as though his whole body had been cleansed. It was indeed an indescribable feeling. A phoenix egg. It was an extraordinary egg. It was definitely a good ingredient. Bufong became more and more excited. In the distance, the Lord Go also stopped moving around and walked with graceful cat-like steps. In just a short while, he arrived beside Buffon. He waved his paw. A pitch-black object flew toward Buffon. Buffon, brat, this is the Shura Tower. It would be a waste to throw it away. The Lord Go reconstructed it for him. After all, it is a fragment of a divine artifact. You can wear it as a pendant. It was a pitch-black tower. It was small and exquisite, and it was only the size of a thumb. It was quite pocket-sized. This was the Shura Tower? Buffon was taken aback. How did the Shura Tower, which covered the entire sky, shrink into such a pocket-sized one? After receiving the Shura Tower, Buffon's brows twitched. The instant he received the Shura Tower, Buffon felt his mental energy surge. As his mental energy flowed through the Shura Tower, it became thicker. It was like a small stream flowing through it, but it became a small river. This little toy could actually increase one's mental energy. This was quite good for Buffon. After all, even though Buffon's cultivation was only at the Supreme Being level, his mental energy had definitely reached the level of a divine, physique echelon expert who had broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles. However, with his mental energy, cooking some dishes was still extremely strenuous. Not to mention the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup. With so many precious ingredients, the amount of mental energy required to cook them would definitely be enormous. It was enough to suck Buffon dry. Hence, this small tower was a good choice for Buffon. Taking a velvet rope, Buffon threaded it through the pitch-black small tower. Then he tied a dead knot at one end and hung it around his neck. Waves of clear energy surged out from the small tower. Not bad. The corners of Buffon's mouth curled up. Lord Go yawned, and the fat on his body trembled. He was feeling sleepy again. This should be an ordinary phoenix egg. It's not bad. Even though it's not a top-grade fire phoenix egg, it's still not bad. Even though its taste can't be compared to a fire phoenix egg, it's still a rare delicacy. Lord Go said lazily. Buffon was taken aback. Listening to this lazy dog's tone, it seemed as though this fellow had eaten a fire phoenix egg before. Could it be that this dog liked to go to other phoenixes' nests for no reason? Such a shameless thing. This lazy dog might really do it. Lord Go naturally didn't know what Buffon was thinking. He walked around the phoenix egg with a puzzled look in his eyes. Why would a phoenix egg appear in the hidden dragon continent? Could it be that it followed the Netherworld River to this secret realm? Lord Go muttered. At this moment, the Netherworld woman was lying on top of the phoenix egg. She stuck out her tongue and licked the phoenix egg. It seemed as though she wouldn't let go of the egg for the rest of her life. Buffon also didn't understand what was going on with this woman. This woman is the Netherworld woman, a woman who was exiled by the Netherworld. Sigh, she's also someone with a bitter life. Her body is constantly being invaded by the aura of death. If she doesn't have a source of essence to replenish her energy, she will suffer a torturous pain. Lord Dog looked at the Netherworld woman and sighed. Buffon, boy, do you see that ice-cold Netherworld ship? That woman doesn't have any spiritual essence, so she can't even walk out of the Netherworld ship. Although Hades isn't a good person, the power of his curse is really strong. Lord Go grinned. Was it really that miserable? Buffon raised his brows and looked at the woman with long, black hair. This woman didn't have an ugly appearance. In fact, it could even be said that she was extremely beautiful. However, her pale complexion made her look like a ghost. Moreover, her face was extremely thin, and she looked like a bag of bones. No matter how beautiful her face was, it would still look horrifying when she looked like a bag of bones. As he thought of this, Buffon furrowed his brows. He pondered for a moment, and black smoke revolved around his arm. The black turtle constellation Wak appeared in front of him. He opened his mouth and spouted a mouthful of golden flames, which started burning fiercely within the wok. After pouring some oil into the wok, Buffon took out a bag of dragon blood rice from the system's dimensional storage. The scarlet dragon blood rice contained an extremely dense spiritual essence. It wasn't the real dragon blood rice, but one that was watered with the blood of a lesser dragon. After stir-frying it several times, Bufong used his mental energy to sense the changes in the dragon blood rice within the wok. Then he took out a huge piece of wandering dragon meat, cut it into small pieces, and poured them into the wok. While stir-frying, Bufong took out a large piece of the blood crown, crushed it, and poured its essence into the wok. The Netherworld woman hugged the phoenix egg, and her gaze fell on Bufong's black turtle constellation wok. Her nose slightly twitched, and her pitch-black eyes lit up. She lightly patted the black turtle constellation wok, and it immediately shook. The fragrant dragon blood rice flew out of the wok, and a blue and white porcelain plate appeared in her hand. She spun the dragon blood rice neatly in her hand. It was just a simple bowl of fried rice, but it was a bowl of fried rice that contained rich essence energy. After all, he had crushed the entire blood crown, and the spiritual essence contained within it was extremely terrifying. The Netherworld woman looked at it curiously. Bufong gently tossed the dragon blood rice toward the Netherworld woman. The latter quickly caught it and greedily sucked in a deep breath. The fragrance, spiritual essence, and spiritual energy of the dragon blood rice instantly rushed into her nose, and a trace of redness appeared on her pale face. The Netherworld woman licked her lips with her scarlet tongue as she took a deep look at Bufong. Then she left the phoenix egg and squatted down at the side. She used her slender fingers to grab a bowl of dragon blood rice and started eating it with big mouthfuls. "Blackie, can I take this egg?" Bufong asked as he stroked Blackie's spotlessly clean fur. "Sure, you can take it." The Lord Go rolled its eyes and replied with a smile. "Huh?" Bufong was taken aback. He shot a glance at the Lord Go and discovered that the corners of this plump dog's mouth were curled up and the fats on his face were jiggling. Was there something strange? Bufong narrowed his eyes. Even though he knew that there was something strange, he couldn't do anything about it. This phoenix egg was too attractive, and it was especially attractive to a chef like him, who pursued the pinnacle of culinary arts. An excellent ingredient was more attractive than a peerless beauty. Bufong walked toward the egg and touched it with his left hand and patted it with his right hand. In the end, he placed his palms on the egg. After taking a deep breath, the true energy within the energy vortex in Bufong's dantian flowed out and spread throughout his limbs and bones. An enormous force was generated. Bufong hugged the phoenix egg and exerted his strength with a soft shout. The phoenix egg was extremely heavy, and Bufong felt as though he wasn't hugging an egg, but a mountain. Of course, for the sake of delicacies, even if it was a mountain, Bufong would still carry it away. Bufong took out a vigorous beef meatball and swallowed it. Immediately, his eyes burned with passion. Bufong's muscles bulged, and he shouted angrily. The phoenix egg actually loosened a little, and it was pulled out by him. The Netherworld woman, who was squatting in the distance, was taken aback. She stopped stuffing food in her mouth and looked at Bufong in astonishment. She didn't understand why this human would be so stupid as to pull out the egg. Could it be that he didn't know that the phoenix egg would appear here without any protection? Didn't he see that the man covered in blood only set up the Shura tower around the egg and absorbed its energy? He didn't touch the egg. The Lord Go was overjoyed as he looked at Bufong. As a dog that was used to plucking phoenix eggs, he naturally knew what the consequences of pulling out a phoenix egg was. As for Bufong, he quickly felt that something was wrong. He looked at the terrifying energy that was being emitted from the bottom of the egg. Bufong's eyes widened. He was flustered and exasperated. "You lazy dog! You actually tricked me?" Chapter 469. As soon as Bufong lifted the phoenix egg, a wave of terrifying suppressive energy spread out from the bottom of the egg. It was as if a ferocious beast that had been sleeping for a long time had suddenly awakened. Buzz, with a buzzing sound, the bottom of the phoenix egg lit up and energy gushed out. It seemed as if some mechanism had been activated, and the formation beneath the phoenix egg was activated. A pair of eyes with a violent aura emerged from the darkness beneath the egg. The ground shook violently, and a beast's roar reverberated in the distance. Bufong's eyes shrank as he looked at the beast's roar coming from the darkness below, as well as the figure that shot out like an arrow. The corners of his mouth twitched. In his mind, the Lord Go's solemn gaze reappeared. "Sure, you can take it. Take your sister." Bufong's face darkened. He suddenly let go of the phoenix egg. However, the shadow had already awakened. As the phoenix egg fell, it was enveloped by a wisp of black energy, and it slowly rose up. A huge figure gradually floated up from the huge array formation that was glowing with brilliance. It covered the sky, and it was incomparably huge. Bufong was dumbfounded as he stared at the colossus. What the hell? He had a pure heart, and he was admiring the phoenix egg. How could such a huge creature be lured out? Moreover, didn't that lazy dog say it was fine? Could he take the phoenix egg? As he recalled the Lord Go's solemn expression, the fat on his face trembled incessantly. Bufong felt a little foolish. Why did he believe that lazy dog's words? Crack, crack, crack. The phoenix egg was supported by a wisp of black energy, swaying in the air. Beneath the black energy was a huge, ferocious bird. However, this bird looked a little strange. It didn't have any flesh, and its entire body was made of white bones. Its bones glowed brilliantly, and it looked like the most exquisite work of art in the world. This is called a bone phoenix. It specialized in guarding phoenix eggs. The Lord Go laughed happily from afar, and he conveniently explained to Bufong. The bone phoenix's aura was extremely terrifying and oppressive. The black aura around its body rumbled and was filled with the aura of death. The bird opened its beak wide and let out a deafening roar like a beast. The bone wings spread open, and the bones on them were densely packed, looking rather sinister. The Netherworld woman smacked her lips as she ate the dragon blood rice. She held the porcelain plate and ran far away from the bone phoenix. The dragon blood rice was simply too delicious. The Netherworld woman was completely intoxicated by it. The bone phoenix was formed by the will of the phoenix's descendant. It was a method used to protect its descendants. Therefore, people with a bit of common sense wouldn't easily take away the phoenix egg. This was because doing so would cause one to be cursed and be pestered by the bone phoenix forever. In the distance, Lord Go opened his mouth wide and laughed, waving his paws. It seemed that he was somehow happy to see Bufong in such a sorry state. A rumbling sound rang out from afar. Then, Xiao Bai's body descended from the sky, blocking in front of Bufong. Bang! The bone phoenix flapped its wings, and a whistling black wind appeared. Its claws ruthlessly swiped downwards, and it seemed as though it wanted to tear the air apart. The illusionary void trembled. The armor on Xiao Bai's body flickered with radiance. He raised his palm leaf fan-like palm in an attempt to catch the bone phoenix. However, the bone phoenix's power was really too great. This bone phoenix's fighting prowess wasn't any weaker than the bloody man. Xiao Bai was caught and sent flying. With a flash of golden light, Shrimpy returned to its original form, lying on Bufong's shoulder once again. This little fellow stared at Bufong with its compound eyes. The Lord Go didn't expect that Xiao Bai would suddenly appear. This silly girl is still trying so hard to protect Bufong. The Lord Go curled up the corners of his mouth, and he looked at the brand new Xiao Bai with curiosity in his eyes. This iron lump was wearing armor, and its fighting prowess seemed to be much stronger than before. However, compared to the bone phoenix, there was still a gap. The bone phoenix roared, and the entire space trembled. This was the will of the phoenix, and its power was incomparably formidable. The Lord Go wasn't worried about Bufong because this phoenix egg was just an ordinary phoenix egg, and the will of the phoenix protecting it wasn't that strong. If this phoenix egg was the egg of a fire phoenix, then even an existence above the divine physique echelon would be courting death if it came here. The might of a fire phoenix was truly terrifying. The Lord Go looked at Bufong, who was holding a black wok and continuously smashing the bone phoenix. The Lord Go was quite satisfied to see the other party in such a difficult situation. He didn't wait for long, and he finally made his move. Striding forward with his enchanting cat-like steps, his figure instantly disappeared. A moment later, he appeared in front of the bone phoenix's giant head. The scarlet eyes of the bone phoenix locked on to the Lord Go, and it opened its mouth, which was full of sharp teeth, and fiercely bit down on the Lord Go. "There are only bones left, and I still want to eat you." The Lord Go. Blackie lazily stretched out its exquisite paw. With a loud bang, the bone phoenix's bones were instantly shattered. Numerous cracks appeared on the white, jade-like bones, and dense essence energy was emitted from those cracks. The bone phoenix was ruthlessly smashed into the ground, and a cloud of dust rose. Smoke and dust billowed. With an angry roar, the bone phoenix opened its mouth, and once again it rushed toward the plump Lord Go in the air to bite him. The Lord Go rolled his eyes, and his figure freely fell. Crack! He sat on the bone phoenix's bones, and the bone phoenix instantly started to crumble. Finally, after a tremor, the smoke and dust dispersed, and the ground was filled with white bones. The Lord Go leisurely sat on the pile of white bones. His butt moved a little, and in the end, he climbed up from the pile of bones. He shook his body, and some bone fragments fell off. Then, he arrogantly raised his head, strode like a cat, and wagged his dog tail as he cheerfully ran down. Boom! The black energy that supported the phoenix egg dispersed because of the bone phoenix's collapse. Without the black energy, the phoenix egg instantly started to fall from the sky. Bufong's pupils shrank. How could he let the phoenix egg fall like that? Although it was a phoenix egg, no one could guarantee that it was harder than a rock. Thus, Bufong's true energy burst out from his feet, and his figure burst out, arriving below the phoenix egg. He opened his arms, turned around, and turned his back to the phoenix egg. The phoenix egg whistled down, and its speed became faster and faster. Bufong's mind was extremely focused, and his eyes were wide open as he looked at the falling phoenix egg. He jumped up high. One of his hands reached out, pressing on the shell of the falling phoenix egg. A huge force spread out, causing Bufong to frown. The Lord Go stuck out his tongue, looking at Bufong with interest. Boom! A loud explosion rang out, and the ground shook. Finally, he landed on the ground. Smoke and dust filled the air, obscuring everything. The wind blew, and the smoke and dust dispersed, revealing the scene inside. Bufong was carrying the giant phoenix egg on his shoulder. His head was tilted, and his hands were supporting it. His face was red, and he was panting hard, his chest heaving up and down. At least, he was holding the phoenix egg. His legs were half buried in the ground, and it was enough to show how much force Bufong had endured. The phoenix egg was already very heavy, and falling from the sky, it was even heavier. The Lord Go also smiled playfully. This kid, Bufong, for the sake of eating, he really risked his life. He put the phoenix egg into the system's dimensional storage. Bufong felt as though all the energy in his body had been sucked out, and his hands were shaking. Taking out an oyster pancake, he quickly stuffed it into his mouth. Only then did Bufong recover some of his energy. However, his fingers were still shaking. If he wanted to recover, he wouldn't be able to do it that fast. Xiaobai scratched his round head, standing behind Bufong. His eyes had turned purple. Xiaopi, who was lying on Bufong's shoulder, rolled his eyes. Just now, this little fellow was almost crushed to death by the phoenix egg. Fortunately, it was hard enough. However, it was still not enough. Not bad, Bufong kid. You've improved. The Lord Go's gentle and magnetic voice rang out. Bufong looked at him, his face expressionless. His eyes were quite unkind. The fat on the Lord Go's face shook, and he said with an embarrassed smile, "If I said that I didn't know that there was something under the phoenix egg, would you believe me? What do you think?" Bufong asked calmly. "If I said that I forgot how to cook sweet and sour ribs, would you believe me?" The Lord Go was startled, and the fat on his body shook. His pupils contracted. "Don't. Great Lord Boo. Lord Go, didn't I help you smash this thing with 2 slaps? Let's talk about it properly." The Lord Go wagged his tail, and his sparkling eyes were bright and filled with sincerity. The Netherworld woman had already finished eating the dragon blood rice, and she stuck out her tongue to lick the blue and white porcelain plate. The entire plate was licked clean, and it seemed as though it had just been washed. In the end, when she couldn't taste anything, she swung her long black hair and walked toward Bufong. She passed the plate to Bufong and said earnestly, "Give me another portion." "I don't have any more," Bufong replied as he put away the plate. The Netherworld woman's face seemed to have regained some of its rosy color after eating the dragon blood rice. When she heard Bufong's words, her pitch-black eyes moved, and a trace of anxiety appeared in them. Her long black hair curled up and wrapped around Bufong's arm. "Give me another portion," the woman said stubbornly. Bufong furrowed his brows and turned his head to look at the ice-cold black hair that wrapped around his arm. Then, he looked at the Netherworld woman's pitch-black eyes. He didn't say anything, and he just looked at her. The Netherworld woman's lips moved, and her black hair loosened. "You know how to cook. You're awesome. I don't have any ingredients now, so I can't cook anymore. That's why I don't have any more." Bufong's gaze became gentler as he explained everything to her. A trace of grievance appeared on the Netherworld woman's stiff face. She stuck out her tongue and licked her fair and slender palm. The fragrance of the dragon blood rice still lingered on her palm. The Lord Go strode over to the Netherworld woman's side with happy, cat-like steps. "Bufong doesn't have any ingredients now, but it doesn't mean that he won't have any in the future. You can follow him and pester him. Won't you have something to eat then?" The Lord Go moved his head closer to the Netherworld woman and whispered, "The Lord Go believes in you, and he favors you." Chapter 470. The Netherworld woman's gaze was somewhat sluggish as she looked at the Lord Go. The fat on his face was jiggling as he spoke with a gentle and magnetic voice. It seemed as though he was trying to bewitch her. However, what he said made sense. The Netherworld woman licked her lips, and she couldn't help but feel somewhat tempted. However, she was still somewhat hesitant. She wasn't sure whether or not Bufong would be able to provide her with dishes filled with rich spiritual essence after leaving the secret realm. If she couldn't replenish her spiritual essence, she would suffer a backlash from the curse, and her body would suffer a torturous pain. She would feel as though she was being sliced by 1,000 blades or being bitten by 10,000 ants. This was why she was somewhat hesitant and indecisive. There were many natural treasures filled with spiritual essence in the secret realm. If she needed them, she could just pluck them. However, if she left the secret realm, it would be much more difficult for her to find natural treasures. This was a matter that she had to make a decision about. She recalled the piping hot dragon blood rice and the wonderful feeling she got when the warm rice flowed down her ice-cold throat and entered her stomach. She couldn't bear to part with such a feeling. "That kid doesn't know anything else, but he does know how to cook. I believe that you, the Lord Go, won't deceive you. You must follow your instincts. Although you are cursed and banished, you can still live your own life." The Lord Go continued to use his magnetic voice to bewitch her. At this moment, Bufong didn't know what the Lord Go and the Netherworld woman were doing. He was walking in this space, which couldn't be considered very big. Lava surged around him, and waves of heat surged around him. After losing the phoenix egg, the spiritual energy in this space quickly decreased, and it didn't have the previous feeling of being able to penetrate his pores anymore. He wanted to see if there were any other spirit herbs around, but he was destined to be disappointed. Perhaps it was because of the phoenix egg and the bone metamorphosing dragon grass, but the spiritual energy in the surroundings had been plundered, and other spirit herbs couldn't grow here. After taking a stroll around the place, Bufong decided to leave. There wasn't any meaning in staying here any longer. Xiaobai blindly followed behind Bufong, and its purple eyes flickered. Xiaopi waved its sickle-like claws and rolled its compound eyes. "Let's go. We should leave this space," Bufong said to Lord Dog, who was talking to the Netherworld woman in the distance. The Lord Go waved its tail and gave the Netherworld woman a look that said, "You understand." Then it walked with enchanting cat-like steps toward Bufong. Bufong looked at the Netherworld woman, who was standing in a daze, but he didn't say anything. He turned around and left. The Netherworld woman's long black hair fluttered as it was blown by the heat wave. Her perfectly straight and exquisite legs slowly opened up as her sparkling jade-like feet stepped on the ground. In the next moment, Bufong felt a gust of wind blow past him. The Netherworld woman was following behind him with an expressionless face. Bufong was taken aback, but he didn't care about it. There was only one way to leave this place, and the Netherworld woman was probably heading in the same direction as him. After walking out of the crack, Bufong returned to the dilapidated Gourmet Island. The auspicious Gourmet Island, which was filled with exotic delicacies, was now in ruins. The spirit trees, which were filled with exotic delicacies, were destroyed and engulfed by the magma. They had turned into charcoal, and steam was still rising from them. The grass on the ground was scorched, and cracks could be seen on the ground. Bufong stepped on the ground and looked at the desolate Gourmet Island. He couldn't help but sigh, and he felt that it was a pity for him. A gourmet island, which was a miracle of nature, was very rare for a chef. It was a pity that beautiful things didn't last long. The destruction of the Gourmet Island made Bufong sad, but he couldn't stop it. After circling the dilapidated Delicacy Island, Bufong couldn't help but furrow his brows. His spirit boat was gone. How was he going to leave this place without a spirit boat? Moreover, how was he going to leave this secret realm? These were all things that gave him a headache. There should be many people who had entered the secret realm who were still alive. After all, not all of them had come to the Gourmet Island, and there should be some people who were still alive on the other islands. It was just that they didn't make it in time. Of course, it was also possible that they had encountered an opportunity that was more suitable for them. The Netherworld woman, who was standing behind Bufong, emitted a cold aura. Bufong couldn't help but shiver, and he subconsciously turned his head to look at her. The Netherworld woman nodded at Bufong, then pointed at the Netherworld ship, which was floating in the sky. "Do you mean that I can ride on your Netherworld ship?" Bufong was taken aback. The Netherworld woman expressionlessly nodded her head. She swung her beautiful legs, and her small, sparkling feet stepped on the ground. She soared into the sky, and her pitch-black hair fluttered in the wind as she landed on the Netherworld ship. Bufong raised his head, and after hesitating for a moment, he also flew onto the ship. "How can I accept this? Although your ship is a little gloomy, it is still much more expensive than a spirit ship," Bufong said, but he had already landed on the deck and was looking around. The Lord Go opened his big mouth and yawned. He found a place on the deck, laid down, and slept soundly. The Netherworld woman glanced at Bufong. Then she stood at the front of the deck. The Netherworld ship rumbled, and it started to move slowly. With a loud bang, the Netherworld ship entered the water, and it set off huge waves. The pitch-black sails fluttered in the wind, and they pushed the Netherworld ship forward, braving the wind and breaking through the waves. Bufong wandered around the Netherworld ship with great interest. In all honesty, the Netherworld ship's workmanship was extremely exquisite, and it was made of an extraordinary material. Although it looked shabby on the surface, and it gave off a gloomy feeling, if one were to look carefully, they would discover that the ship was so exquisite that it would cause anyone to exclaim in admiration. All of a sudden, Bufong's gaze fell on the cabin of the ship. Looking at the tightly shut cabin door, Bufong suddenly remembered something. He seemed to remember that Nangong Wuk, that clown, was also on this ship. When that fellow was pulled into the cabin, his expression of despair was still deeply imprinted in Bufong's mind. Well, they made such a big commotion, but Nangong Wuk still didn't come out. Could it be that he was embarrassed? Bufong took a few steps and arrived in front of the cabin door. He hesitated for a moment, then raised his hand, intending to open the cabin door. However, just as his hand touched the cabin door, he felt a gloomy and cold aura behind him. Bufong's body stiffened, and he turned his head around to look at the Netherworld woman's ice-cold and beautiful face. Nangong Wuk's nostrils flared, and he breathed heavily. His whole body was drenched in sweat, and his muscles were bulging. An unyielding will was supporting his body. He wasn't willing to admit defeat. He was the man who would manage the Nangong family in the future. How could he stay in a ship and be licked to death by a woman? No, this was absolutely unforgivable. He had to struggle, and he had to endure this enormous pressure and climb out of this gloomy ship. He couldn't die here. Bean-sized beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. They streaked across his eyes, his nose, the corners of his mouth, and his chin before they fell to the ground. His heavy breathing echoed in the silent and cold cabin. He was getting closer. He was really getting closer. He was about to touch the cabin door. His spring had arrived. Creak! His face was filled with malevolence. He clenched his teeth and raised his hand. It seemed like his fingertips were about to touch the cabin door. However, right at that moment, a heavy sound echoed, and the cabin door was opened. Rays of light shone through the cabin door, and they illuminated Nangong Wuk's eyes. He couldn't help but shed tears. A figure was standing in front of the cabin door. Nangong Wuk raised his head, and tears streamed down his face. It didn't seem to be that voluptuous woman with long black hair. The figure seemed somewhat familiar. Bufong had just pushed open the cabin door when he saw Nangong Wuk, who was lying on the ground with his head tilted up and his nostrils wide open, and tears streamed down his face. What the F***CK? Where did this lunatic come from? Bufong was startled. He raised his leg and almost kicked Nangong Wuk's face. However, when he recalled Nangong Wuk's face, Bufong managed to restrain himself. Old Boo, why is it you? Am I dreaming? Nangong Wuk's tears flowed down uncontrollably. He was somewhat dumbfounded. Bufong lowered his leg, nodded, and calmly said, "It's me." Nangong Wuk felt as though his spring had arrived. That smirking expression was indeed Old Boo's. Nangong Wuk's expression stiffened. A pair of fair and perfect legs stretched out from behind Bufong, and a graceful figure stood beside Bufong. The Netherworld woman's expressionless face entered his line of sight. Nangong Wuk was dumbfounded. His mouth trembled, and sorrow welled up in his heart. It wasn't easy for him to reach this place. The Netherworld woman raised her slender palm and waved it. Nangong Wuk grabbed the ground and was pulled into the depths of the cabin. Why am I always the one who gets hurt? Nangong Wuk felt as though he had nothing left to live for. The Netherworld woman had once again mercilessly crushed his dreams and expectations. Bufong was taken aback. It seemed as though he was confused by the relationship between Nangong Wuk and the Netherworld woman. What was going on? Was it the legendary love-hate relationship? Bufong explained it to the Netherworld woman for a long time. He told her that Nangong Wuk was his friend, and he hoped that she would release him. The Netherworld woman expressionlessly listened to him, and she shook her head. Nangong Wuk's cries, which sounded like a pig being slaughtered, echoed from the cabin. Bufong curled up the corners of his mouth and said, "I will use a bowl of dragon blood rice to exchange for this guy. Is that fine?" The Netherworld woman was taken aback. Her small mouth pouted, and she nodded her head in an adorable manner. Bufong was taken aback. What happened to her principles? What happened to her persistence? As expected, Nangong Wuk was only worth a bowl of dragon blood rice. The Netherworld woman's adorable expression only appeared for a moment, and it quickly became ice-cold and merciless. She looked at the cabin with her pitch-black eyes and waved her hand. Nangong Wuk felt the pressure that had been pressing down on him suddenly disappear. He crawled up from the ground in disbelief, and his face was filled with joy. After he crawled up from the ground, he rushed out while wailing like a ghost. "Old Boo, from now on, I, Nangong Wuk, am yours." Nangong Wuk was so moved that he wanted to cry. He knew that it was Bufong who had saved him. The Netherworld woman, who was standing beside Bufong, had an ice-cold expression on her face as she looked at the elated Nangong Wuk. Nangong Wuk's body trembled, and he looked at this beautiful woman in fear. She was a F***king she-devil. Therefore, he gave up on giving Bufong a big hug and decided to stay away from this woman first. After seeing Nangong Wuk leave, the Netherworld woman shifted her gaze and looked at Bufong. "Hurry up and cook my meal." Bufong was having a headache. Without the blood crown, how was he going to make dragon blood rice? Chapter 471. The Netherworld woman couldn't wait to taste the dragon blood rice, cooked by Bu Fong again. It wasn't only because of the rich spiritual essence contained within it, but it was also because the taste of the dragon blood rice was simply too delicious when compared to those natural treasures. The taste buds that were stirred up by the dragon blood rice, which made her whole body tremble, was simply too wonderful. She had unknowingly become addicted to this feeling, and she wanted to taste the dragon blood rice cooked by Bu Fong again. Compared to the Netherworld woman's anxiety, Bu Fong felt a headache coming on. It wasn't that he didn't want to cook it, but he didn't have the ingredients. He did have the dragon blood rice, but it was impossible to bring out the full flavor of the dragon blood rice by relying on it alone. Without the nourishment of the blood crown, the taste of the dragon blood rice would be much worse. Of course, if it was just stir-frying the dragon blood rice, Bu Fong would be able to do it. He could even stir-fry the dragon blood rice, and it wouldn't be difficult for him to do so. However, without the blood crown, the dragon blood rice wouldn't be able to provide the Netherworld woman with enough spiritual essence. It would be an insult to a chef if he couldn't give his customers a perfect tasting experience. Bu Fong naturally wouldn't allow himself to cook such a dish. The Netherworld woman's pitch-black gaze was fixed on Bu Fong, and it made Bu Fong's hair stand on end. Her pure gaze was filled with expectation. Bu Fong felt that if he rejected her, he would be committing a crime. Bu Fong, kiddo, don't you have the crystal source purple essence? Lord Go, who was lying on the ground and taking a nap, suddenly appeared beside Bu Fong and whispered something to him. Crystal source purple essence? Bu Fong's eyes lit up. That's right. Although he didn't have the blood crown, he had the crystal source purple essence, which was a natural treasure. Compared to the blood crown, the crystal source purple essence's essence energy was much richer and more abundant. After all, the Netherworld woman had flown into a rage because of the crystal source purple essence. After thinking it through, Bu Fong suddenly looked at Lord Go suspiciously. He knew that this lazy dog's motive for bringing up the crystal source purple essence was definitely not that simple. Bu Fong realized that this lazy dog had become a lot more meticulous even though they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The crystal source purple essence is a great tonic. Even if you don't cook it, just eating it will still taste very good. Moreover, it's rich in essence energy. It's very effective in dispelling the Netherworld woman's curse, Lord Go explained to Bu Fong. When the Netherworld woman heard Lord Go's words, her eyes lit up. Bu Fong was speechless. He felt that something was wrong. What you said makes sense. However, we should first find a way to leave the Cloud Sea secret zone. Before we leave, I will cook a dish for this woman. After saying this, Bu Fong walked away without turning his head back. The Netherworld woman became somewhat anxious. She strode forward with her slender and beautiful legs and followed behind Bu Fong. Old Bu, is this a fat dog raised by your family? I didn't see it in the store. Nangong Wuk's eyes lit up when he saw Lord Go. His first impression was that this black dog was really fat. His second impression was that such a fat dog would definitely taste good. Nangong Wuk had once stolen a chicken in the pill tower. When he saw this black dog, he subconsciously wanted to pet it. Stealing a chicken and touching a dog was the most exciting thing in the world. However, when he saw the woman with long black hair standing behind Bu Fong, his whole body trembled. He was truly frightened by this woman, and a shadow had formed at his heart. Lord Go seemed to have sensed Nangong Wuk's malicious gaze. He curled up the corners of his mouth and didn't pay any attention to this clown. We have entered the secret realm. How are we going to leave? Bu Fong didn't answer Nangong Wuk's question. Instead, he asked another question. If they wanted to leave this secret realm, they would definitely need Nangong Wuk's help. Although this guy was a clown, he was still the successor of the Nangong family. His understanding of the secret realm was much greater than theirs. Since he knew how to enter, he naturally knew how to leave. Are we going to leave? Nangong Wuk was stupefied when he heard this question. Why are we leaving? What happened? Did the great battle in the secret realm already end? Did the fight for the fortuitous opportunities end? That's right. Why are we staying here if we don't leave? Bu Fong calmly glanced at him and replied. Nangong Wuk looked at the Netherworld woman. He suddenly had an urge to risk his life with this woman. He had painstakingly and complacently entered this secret realm in order to find fortuitous opportunities. He wanted to use them to seize back the Nangong family. However, what did this woman do? She imprisoned him in the pitch-black cabin and licked him from time to time. What happened in the end? He missed out on all the fortuitous opportunities, so he came to this secret realm just to be a bystander? To hell with being a bystander. Why is the whole world hurting me? He felt as if an invisible arrow had pierced through his heart, causing his tears to flow uncontrollably. Bu Fong didn't understand why he was crying again. How long had it been since they last met? Why did this clown cry like a woman? Other people came to the secret realm to fight for fortuitous opportunities. Could it be that this clown came to the secret realm to change his sex? The way to leave this secret realm is actually very simple. There is a teleportation array in this secret realm. It is the teleportation array that my Nangong family spent a large amount of money to build. This teleportation array can take us out of the Cloud Sea secret realm, Nangong Wuk said as he wiped his tears. He felt bitter in his heart, but he didn't say it out loud. A teleportation array? Bu Fong nodded. If there was a teleportation array, things would be much easier. Can you find the location of that teleportation array? Bring us there. I will immediately cook the improved dragon blood rice for you. Bu Fong turned around and said to the Netherworld woman who was standing behind him. The Netherworld woman nodded and raised her palm. Immediately, the pitch-black sail fluttered in the wind, creating a gale as it broke through the waves and advanced forward. After a while, we will be able to see the teleportation array, the Netherworld woman said. Don't forget what you said. Bu Fong nodded calmly. Nangong Wuk blew his snot and shook his red hair. He pulled Bu Fong to the side and asked him about what happened in the secret realm. Nangong Wuk came to the Cloud Sea secret realm just to be a bystander. However, he had come here before, so he understood some things. Wouldn't it be easier for him to answer people's questions? Bu Fong didn't think too much about it, and he told Nangong Wuk everything he knew. Of course, there were some things that he concealed. For example, he obtained some natural treasures or accidentally plucked a phoenix egg. Nangong Xuanha, that old dog, died? Ha ha ha. It's good that he died. Before entering the secret realm, I knew that the old dog would die. It was just as I expected. When he heard that the old dog, Nangong Xuanha, actually died in the secret realm, he felt extremely delighted. Nangong Wuk felt as if he had obtained a peerless opportunity. He felt that this trip to the secret realm was worth it. Even if he didn't obtain anything, it was enough for him to obtain news about the old dog's death. Without Nangong Xuanha, he would have a chance to regain control of the Nangong family after returning to the heavenly Mist City. However, there was still Nangong Xuanhu, who was an expert who had broken through 2 of the Supreme Being's shackles. Nangong Wuk might not be his match. However, this wasn't a problem anymore. As long as the old dog, Nangong Xuanha, died, the rest would be easy to deal with. Look, that's the teleportation array's location. The Netherworld woman, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke. She pointed at a beam of light that soared into the sky. That beam of light soared into the sky and penetrated the thick layer of clouds, causing the clouds to revolve like a vortex. It was quite magnificent. Bu Fong stood on the deck of the ship and looked into the distance. The teleportation array was located on a vast island. The Nangong family was really generous. They unexpectedly used an entire island as a teleportation array. On both sides of the Netherworld ship, there were many spirit boats sailing through the waves. Those were the lucky survivors. When those spirit boats reached the island, a black figure quickly flew out of them and entered the teleportation array. After Bu Fong confirmed the location of the teleportation array, he nodded his head. Black smoke curled up from his arm, and a pitch-black turtle constellation wok appeared in his hand. The black turtle constellation wok was still simple and heavy, and it emitted an aura that caused people's hearts to palpitate. Bu Fong opened his mouth and spouted a ball of golden flames. He started to fulfill his promise and cooked a bowl of dragon blood rice for the Netherworld woman. It could be considered his final reward. The Netherworld woman was filled with expectation as she stood there. Nangon Wuk stretched his neck and looked at the heaven and earth obsidian flame that Bufong spouted. He was envious. In the past, he was also a man who possessed a heaven and earth obsidian flame. A rich fragrance wafted out of the black turtle constellation Wok, and it intoxicated both him and the netherworld woman. However, there was no blood crown this time, so Bufong decided to use the crystal source purple essence instead. He took out a warm jade bottle from his system dimensional bag. The jade bottle emitted a rich spiritual energy. The jade bottle contained the crystal source purple essence. It was the crystal source purple essence that was extracted from the crystal mine. The Lord Go's figure appeared beside Bufong, and it widened its eyes as it stared at the jade bottle in Bufong's hand. The familiar aroma wafting out of the jade bottle made the wolf dog extremely excited. It stuck out its tongue, and saliva flew everywhere. The crystal source purple essence was a delicacy that was only inferior to the sweet and sour ribs. True energy appeared in Bufong's hand, and it emitted a suction force as it touched the bottle's mouth. In an instant, a drop of purple liquid floated out of the bottle and floated above his finger. It was the crystal source purple essence. Although it was just a drop, the spiritual energy it contained was enough to make one's heart tremble. Bufong put away the jade bottle and guided it to float above the black turtle constellation Wok. Under everyone's gazes, the true energy on Bufong's fingertip turned into a sharp drill, and he ruthlessly drilled the drop of liquid. The sound of something breaking could be heard. The crystal source purple essence splashed out, and a small drop fell into the Wok, causing the scarlet dragon blood rice to turn purple in an instant. The purple color was extremely bright. Bufong shook the Wok and stir-fried the crystal source purple essence. The fragrance was even more intense than before, and it even surprised Bufong. The crystal source purple essence was actually such a powerful seasoning. Dense essence energy, overflowing spiritual energy, and surging steam filled the Wok. Everyone couldn't help but take a deep breath of it. After scooping out the purple dragon blood rice from the Wok, Bufong passed the blue and white porcelain bowl to the netherworld woman. She impatiently took the bowl, and she didn't care that it was scalding hot. She grabbed a handful of rice and stuffed it into her mouth. The way she ate was a stark contrast to her cold and aloof appearance. Bufong, boy, what about me, the Lord Go? Give me a portion of it for the Lord Go as well. Old Boo, what about me? I haven't eaten anything for 3 days and 3 nights. Just when Bufong retracted his gaze, 2 greedy voices rang out beside him. Bufong couldn't help but shiver when he heard those voices. Chapter 472. As expected, Bufong knew that the lazy dog didn't remind him about the crystal source purple essence out of good intentions. It must have reminded him because it wanted to taste the crystal source purple essence. Lord Go looked at Bufong with sparkling eyes, which were filled with longing and expectation. Bufong was too embarrassed to refuse him. He scooped up a portion of dragon blood rice and gave it to Lord Go. Lord Go excitedly gobbled down the rice. His dog tail wagged unceasingly, which showed how happy he was at this moment. Lord Go was delighted with his quick-wittedness. In the past, he would swallow the crystal source purple essence in one gulp. Although the taste wasn't bad, there was something missing. Sure enough, if Bufong used the crystal source purple essence to cook, not only would he be able to taste the flavor of the crystal source purple essence, but he would also be able to taste the rare delicacy of the dragon blood rice. Why wouldn't he be happy? Old Boo, what about me? Give me a bowl as well. I haven't eaten anything for 3 days and 3 nights. Look, I'm so hungry that I've lost weight. Nangon Wuk said to Bufong with tears in his eyes. The fragrance emitted by the dragon blood rice stimulated the gluttonous worm in his stomach, which made him feel extremely uncomfortable. He was very clear about the taste of the dishes cooked by Bufong. It was a delicacy that he had never tasted before. Now that such a delicacy was right in front of him, how could he miss it? Bufong looked at him, and Nangon Wuk blinked his eyes to express his pity. No, this guy was really pitiful. Bufong scooped out the remaining dragon blood rice from the black turtle constellation walk. However, it was only half a bowl. So be it. Nangong Wuk felt somewhat stifled. Half a bowl wasn't even enough for him to eat a few mouthfuls. However, having something to eat was better than not having anything to eat. Nangong Wuk took the blue and white porcelain plate from Bufong and started to eat excitedly. With just a single bite, he felt as though all the pores on his body had opened up. Dense essence energy surged through his body, making him feel as though he had ascended. This rice is so awesome. Nangong Wuk opened his eyes wide. He felt a warm current circulating within his body, cleansing his body. Filth was constantly being washed out of his body. He finished the rest of the dragon blood rice in 2 or 3 mouthfuls. Once it entered his stomach, he felt energy sweeping through his body. His entire body seemed to be emitting a sparkling brilliance. The energy filled his body, making him feel like he was about to explode. It's too huge. Is this really something that a bowl of rice can achieve? What he was eating was not rice. It was as if he had swallowed an elixir. It could even be said that ordinary pills couldn't achieve this effect. Nangong Wuk immediately sat down cross-legged. His whole body was dazzling, and his sleeves fluttered in the wind. His aura started fluctuating. A bowl of dragon blood rice had given him the opportunity to break through. The Netherworld ship was still braving the wind and breaking the waves as it moved forward. The distant Array Island could already be seen clearly. The island was full of people. Everyone also saw the Netherworld ship. This ship was very famous in the secret territory, but not everyone recognized it. Looking at the ship, everyone felt a chill run down their spines, and their hair stood on end. It was an extremely terrifying ship. Who was on that ship? Yang Meiji supported the feeble Master Xianbei. The two of them were in the teleportation array, waiting to be teleported out. Naturally, they also saw the pitch-black Netherworld ship. Yang Meiji's muscles started to tremble. Others might not recognize it, but she naturally recognized it. Back when they were in the crack, the Netherworld ship revealed its unparalleled might. Even the man covered in blood was somewhat afraid of that ship. Why would such a terrifying ship appear here? Could it be that the ship wanted to stop them from leaving the secret territory? Did it want to destroy their teleportation array? When she thought of this, Yang Meiji felt as though all of her energy was being sucked out. If the teleportation array was destroyed, then all of them would really die here. Nangong Xuanhu wore a solemn expression as he stood in the teleportation array. His heart was pounding, and he felt as though something bad was about to happen. What happened to his big brother, Nangong Xuanhe? Why hasn't he come out yet? Did something happen to him? It was normal for accidents to happen in the secret territory. Even existence like Nangong Wantian died in the secret territory. It was quite possible that something happened to Nangong Xuanhe. However, Nangong Xuanhu still prayed that his big brother could come out alive. He had already lost his second brother, and he didn't want to lose his big brother as well. The Netherworld ship broke through the waves, and it caused a lot of panic. All of a sudden, a beam of light shot out from the Netherworld ship. Although it wasn't as intense as the beam of light from the teleportation array, it still contained intense energy fluctuations. A pitch-black chain appeared in the void, and it collided with the chain, emitting a clanking sound. Was someone making a breakthrough? Everyone was startled. Most of the experts here had broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles, and they clearly understood what such a scene signified. Who was making a breakthrough? Moreover, from the looks of it, it wasn't just one shackle that was severed. Rather, it was the second shackle. This was quite amazing. It seemed like the person who made a breakthrough had obtained a great opportunity in the secret territory. Buzz, the teleportation array, seemed to have been affected by the aura of a breakthrough, and its energy surged as it started operating ahead of time. The flickering radiance of the array revolved, and it seemed as though it wanted to distort the void. A peculiar fluctuation spread out, and the teleportation array started. Buzz, a wave of fluctuation swept past, and Yang Meiji heaved a sigh of relief. Everything in front of her became blurry, and she quickly felt dizzy. The teleportation array had started. Nangong Xuanhu, was also teleported away, and the experts who were originally on the teleportation array were also teleported out of the secret territory. The Netherworld ship stopped, and it floated outside the teleportation array. Bu Fong, who was standing on the deck, had a profound look in his eyes as he looked at the teleportation array. Nangong Wuk, who was behind him, started restraining his energy, and his aura gradually calmed down. True energy fluctuations continuously rumbled around him. Behind him, two pitch-black chains swayed and fluttered in the wind. Nangong Wuk was so excited that he wanted to shout. He didn't expect that he would be able to make a breakthrough just because of Bu Fong's bowl of rice. It seemed like the opportunity had come, and he couldn't avoid it. Lord Go, who had also finished eating the dragon blood rice, squinted his eyes lazily and wagged his tail. The Netherworld woman started to lick the plate again. Her tongue brushed across the blue and white porcelain plate, making it very clean. The teleportation array has been activated, so we should leave, Nangong Wuk said. Nangong Wuk nodded his head. He could finally leave this damned place, and he could finally distance himself from this crazy and terrifying woman. Nangong Wuk wasn't just happy about his breakthrough, but he was also excited about leaving this crazy woman. He would probably have to suffer from nightmares for several days to wash away the fear the Netherworld woman had brought him. Bu Fong took the plate that the Netherworld woman passed to him, and he nodded his head. I have already fulfilled my promise to you. Let's part ways here, and we will meet again in the future. Bu Fong nodded his head at the Netherworld woman as he spoke. The Netherworld woman's tall and slender body didn't have the slightest expression on it. She just calmly looked at Bu Fong and didn't reply. Bu Fong didn't care about it. He turned around and stepped on the wall of the Netherworld ship. The wind whistled as it blew past him, and his hair fluttered in the wind. In the next moment, he exerted force on his feet, and he jumped out of the Netherworld ship, and he rushed toward the teleportation array below. Xiao Bai's purple eyes flickered, and the metal wings on his back spread open. He flapped them for a while, and he followed after Nangong Wuk. Nangong Wuk took a look at the Netherworld woman, and he heaved a sigh of relief before he also left the Netherworld ship. In the end, only the Netherworld woman and the Lord Go were left on the huge Netherworld ship. The Lord Go looked at the Netherworld woman with a profound and meaningful gaze, and with a swoosh, he disappeared from his original position. The Netherworld woman was left alone in her original position. The wind blew gently, and the Netherworld woman's pitch-black dress fluttered in the wind. Her pitch-black eyes seemed to have a radiance circulating within them. Her sparkling feet lightly stepped on the deck of the ship, and she walked toward the deck. She looked at Bu Fong and Nangong Wuk, who had been teleported away by the teleportation array. She stuck out her tongue, and she licked her lips as she savored the taste of the dragon blood rice. Then, a rosy flush appeared on her pale skin, and a trace of excitement flickered in her pitch-black eyes. She exerted force with her fair and slender legs, and she jumped out of the Netherworld ship. With a single thought, the enormous Netherworld ship emitted a rumbling sound, and it quickly shrank. It turned into a small pendant, which the Netherworld woman wore around her neck. The Netherworld woman's clothes fluttered in the wind, and she also descended toward the teleportation array. The world spun around him, and Bu Fong opened his eyes. In front of him was the familiar Nangong family's building, and there was a teleportation array in that spacious and empty building. It seemed like they had returned to Heavenly Mist City from a secret realm. There were many people in the building, and they were the guards of the Nangong family's teleportation array. The people who were teleported out of the teleportation array had already left. Bu Fong walked out of the teleportation array, and Nangong Wuk and the others appeared behind him. Xiao Bai retracted his metallic wings, and he continued to follow behind Bu Fong. As for Lord Go, he strode forward with his enchanting cat-like steps, and he walked leisurely. Nangong Wuk felt as though his whole body was brimming with energy, and when he breathed in the Heavenly Mist City's aura, he felt as though he had come back to life. To him, this trip to the secret realm was truly an indescribable nightmare. Now that he had finally gotten rid of this nightmare, his body and mind became joyful, and he felt incomparably happy. The most important thing was that his cultivation had actually made a breakthrough, and this was what excited him the most. Since his cultivation had made a breakthrough, and that old dog Nangong Xuanhe had died in the secret realm, it was time for him to regroup and take back everything that belonged to him. There was also the matter of saving Nangong Wan. It was fortunate that she hadn't married that sissy, Mu Chinfeng. No one expected that the genius alchemist of Heavenly Pill City, Mu Chinfeng, would actually die in the secret realm. Not only that, but Nangong Wuk suddenly took a deep breath. He felt as though the Heavenly Mist City was about to undergo a huge earthquake. After all, many genius disciples of first-rate factions had died in the Cloud Sea secret realm, and this wasn't a small matter. The Heavenly Mist City would soon be in an uproar. Nangong Wuk stood beside the teleportation array with his hands clasped behind his back, and he sighed with emotion. All of a sudden, the teleportation array behind him lit up. Nangong Wuk was taken aback. How could someone be teleported out? He subconsciously turned around, and what he saw was a beautiful, ice-cold face. Her beauty was beyond compare. Nangong Wuk felt all the hair on his body stand up, and he was so scared that he almost peed his pants. My little heart, why was this crazy woman also teleported out? Chapter 473. When Nangong Wuk saw the Netherworld woman, he was completely stupefied. Her beautiful face caused his heart to tremble, and her ice-cold temperament caused his body to stiffen. Why did this woman appear here? Shouldn't she always stay in the secret realm? If he left the secret realm, wouldn't he never be able to see her again? This woman was like a nightmare to him. The Netherworld woman had a tall and slender figure. She wore a black dress that wrapped around her voluptuous body, and her fair and beautiful legs were perfectly straight. She calmly stood in the middle of the teleportation array, and her pitch-black eyes passed through the array and fell on Bufong. Bufong also heard the commotion behind him, so he turned his head around and saw the Netherworld woman standing in the teleportation array. Her long black hair draped over her shoulders, reaching her waist. Coupled with her pale and beautiful face, she left a deep impression on anyone who saw her. Netherworld woman? Bufong was startled. Like him, he was also somewhat puzzled. Why did this woman appear here? The Lord Ghost squinted his eyes and grinned as he wagged his tail in a gratified manner. Maybe she doesn't want to part with the food you cooked? The Lord Ghost said in a gentle and magnetic voice. Bufong was startled, and he shot a glance at the plump dog. The plump dog's words made sense. The Netherworld woman took a step forward. She didn't wear any shoes on her fair feet, and it seemed like she didn't like wearing shoes. Her sparkling toes touched the ground as she slowly walked forward. She walked out of the teleportation array and followed behind Bufong. Do you still want to eat the dragon blood rice? Bufong asked calmly. The Netherworld woman's gaze didn't change, and she expressionlessly nodded. The dragon blood rice, which had been infused with crystal source purple essence, completely attracted the Netherworld woman. The spiritual essence contained within the dragon blood rice, which was infused with crystal source purple essence, was much stronger than ordinary natural treasures. If she could frequently eat such dishes by following Bufong, the curse on her body would be easily suppressed. This way, she wouldn't have to endure hellish torment when she couldn't find any natural treasures. She didn't need much, and her goal was also very simple. She just didn't want to endure too much pain. Bufong furrowed his brows when he saw the Netherworld woman's gaze. He could sense the desire in her eyes. Bufong, take this girl with you. Don't you need a waitress in your new restaurant? You can't let Xiao Yi come to your new store, can you? Lord Go's voice rang in Bufong's ears again. Bufong glanced at the plump dog and felt that something was amiss. Don't tell me that I've become the Lord Go's accomplice in kidnapping the Netherworld woman. This possibility was very high. However, after thinking about it carefully, Bufong felt that it made sense. The Cloud Mist restaurant was indeed lacking a waiter. This woman was originally staying in a secret realm. Now that she had come to Heavenly Mist City, she should also be homeless. If he didn't accept her and let her wander the continent. It would be somewhat unreasonable. Of course, he could also hand this woman over to Nangong-wook. However, Nangong-wook's face was filled with fright when he saw the Netherworld woman, so he knew that this method wouldn't work. So, he could only let her follow him. Fine, you can follow me. Bufang nodded his head. The Netherworld woman's eyes lit up, and she pouted to express her happiness. Old Boo, are you really going to accept this woman? Nangong-wook's face was filled with disbelief as he looked at Bufang. Why did it have to be like this? How could he go to Bufang's store in the future? However, before Nangong-wook could finish his words, he felt a gaze filled with killing intent. The Netherworld woman turned her head and looked at him. Her pitch-black eyes seemed to be filled with killing intent. Don't be like this. Sister, you're awesome. Nangong-wook immediately became terrified, and he forcefully swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Everyone left the Nangong family's building and went to the streets of Heavenly Mist City. The streets were filled with people, and it was bustling with noise and excitement. Although the battles in the secret realm were intense, and the number of people who died was quite disastrous, Heavenly Mist City was still the same as before. It was prosperous and peaceful. Spirit beast carriages flew past the city, and tall buildings rose from the ground. The sounds of people selling their wares, and the fragrance of elixirs, and many other things engulfed this restless city. Nangong-wook bid farewell to Bufang and left. His cultivation had already broken through, and he still had important matters to take care of. Bufang nodded his head and didn't say anything. He brought along Xiao Bai, Blackie, and Xiaopi, who was lying on his shoulder, and slowly walked toward the Heavenly Mist City's Cloud Mist restaurant. At this moment, another figure appeared behind Bufang. It was the Netherworld woman's slender figure. Pill Tower. In the Pill Tower, which was shrouded in mist, an old man was sitting cross-legged in a secret alchemy room. An old man was sitting cross-legged in a secret alchemy room, and blood was unceasingly flowing out of his mouth. This old man was Master Xianbei, who Yang Meiji had brought out of the secret realm. He had broken through 3 of the Supreme Being's shackles, and he was severely injured by the man covered in blood. He needed time to recover. Yang Meiji stood nervously in the secret room, and she looked at her teacher, who was recovering. After a long time, Master Xianbei's aura recovered slightly. He opened his eyes and waved his hand at Yang Meiji. You should return to your secret room and cultivate properly. This time, try to break through to the divine physique echelon. At that time, I will give you some good things. Master Xianbei said weakly. Yang Meiji nodded her head respectfully, and she turned around and left the secret room. She had obtained many good things in this trip to the secret realm. Although they weren't as good as Bufang's, she had obtained many natural treasures while following Master Xianbei. These things were enough for her to refine a batch of high-quality, one-mark spirit pills. Moreover, she would be able to break through to the divine physique echelon. She was already half a step into the divine realm, and it wouldn't be difficult for her to break through to the divine physique echelon. Of course, she was also curious about what good things her teacher had prepared for her. After Yang Meiji left, Master Xianbei let out a long breath. He raised his trembling hand, and a ball of white flame danced in his palm. Heaven and Earth Obsidian Flame, the 9 Hell King Flame? I hope that this flame can help Yang Meiji reach a higher level. I hope that she will be able to obtain a good ranking in the upcoming competition. I hope that she can enter the Heavenly Pill City's Pill Tower to cultivate. This was the 9 Hell King Flame. After Nangong Xuanhe died, this old man extracted it from his corpse. He didn't choose to fuse with it himself. Instead, he wanted to let Yang Meiji fuse with it. After all, he was already old, and his potential was exhausted. However, Yang Meiji was the disciple he was most proud of. Yang Meiji's talent in alchemy was the best he had ever seen. Even a monstrous genius of Heavenly Mist City, Nangong-wook, couldn't compare to her. It was said that this 9 Hell King flame originally belonged to Nangong-wook. However, this Heaven and Earth Obsidian flame belongs to me now. I have the final say in everything. Bufong returned to the area where the Cloud Mist restaurant was located. Although Bufong felt that they hadn't been in the secret realm for a long time, more than a month had already passed in the outside world. Since the Cloud Mist restaurant hadn't opened for business for more than a month, the surrounding elixir stores became very popular. Originally, the Nangong family chose this location because they knew that their business would flourish. However, they didn't expect that the Cloud Mist restaurant would suddenly appear and use such an unreasonable method to snatch away the elixir store's business. What the F***CK? Isn't that Owner Boo? Did he come back from the secret realm? Oh my god, Owner Boo is back. My store is going to open for business again. Isn't opening for business the same as losing our jobs? My heart feels so stifled. I feel so uncomfortable that I want to cry. When the owners of the surrounding elixir stores saw Bufong and his entourage, their faces darkened. Bufong, on the other hand, was quite calm. He expressionlessly nodded at the owners, as though he was greeting old friends. Actually, the owners of these elixir stores were quite familiar with Bufong. All of them had eaten in his restaurant before. Bufong had always been gentle toward his customers. Except for the owners of the elixir stores, the eyes of the customers who had been buying elixirs lit up. After waiting for so long, Owner Boo had finally returned. They could once again taste the delicacies that had intoxicated them. Stinky tofu, Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Those delicacies that had intoxicated them. A group of people followed behind Bufong, waiting for Bufong to open the restaurant's doors. However, after following Bufong for a while, many people's gazes were involuntarily attracted by the graceful figure wrapped in a black dress. She had a peerlessly beautiful face, a devilish figure, and especially her fair, jade-like legs. What the? Owner Boo went out for a trip? So how did he bring back such a beautiful woman? How could Owner Boo face our Nangong goddess? The numerous customers were filled with righteous indignation, but their gazes were still fixed on the Netherworld woman. The Netherworld woman's footsteps stopped, and she coldly turned around. Her pitch-black pupils swept through the crowd. In an instant, the customers felt as though their bodies had been enveloped by a layer of ice. This woman's gaze was so terrifying. Everyone shuddered. They were all subdued by the Netherworld woman. When the Netherworld woman turned around and continued to twist her devilish body, Duan Ling Tion's eyes widened. The customers immediately burst into an uproar. What an aloof goddess. She's as cold as Owner Boo, but she's so beautiful. Was the goddess looking at me a moment ago? I think so. In the future, I will come here to see the goddess every day. After opening the bronze door, Bufong returned to the store. Do you have a name? Bufong turned his head to look at the Netherworld woman and asked. The Netherworld woman glanced at him, but she didn't say anything. Her face was cold and detached. Bufong felt a toothache, and he looked at the Lord Go with an inquiring gaze. Don't look at the Lord Go. How would the Lord Go know? Blackie rolled its eyes and yawned. It strode with enchanting cat-like steps and ran toward the Path Understanding tree. Then it lay down on the tree and slept soundly. Eating, sleeping, and walking cat-like steps were all part of the Lord Go's daily routine. In that case, I will call you Nangong from now on. From today onwards, you'll be a waiter of the Cloud Mist restaurant. You don't have any other duties besides recording the customers' orders and reporting them to me. Every day, I will provide you with dishes filled with spiritual essence. Just treat it as a reward. Bufong said, in any case, feeding the Lord Go was the same as feeding the Lord Go, so feeding you wouldn't make any difference. When the Lord Go heard the name you, the corners of his mouth twitched. Even a dog couldn't bear to listen to Bufong's naming techniques. The Netherworld woman was dazed for a moment, and she nodded her head. Then, Bufong exhaled and curled up the corners of his mouth. He turned around and entered the kitchen. Then, let's start the business now, Bufong said. Meanwhile, Nangong Wuk, who had just entered the Nangong family's courtyard, emitted a baleful aura. Chapter 474. the Nangong family's courtyard. The courtyard occupied a vast area, and it was filled with pavilions, terraces, and winding rivers. It was overflowing with an ancient aura. When Nangong Wuk stepped into the courtyard, he sensed an austere aura, and he couldn't help but squint his eyes. When he stepped into the courtyard, several guards saw Nangong Wuk from afar, and they were so frightened that they turned around and ran away. They didn't stop Nangong Wuk, and they acted as if they had seen a dreadful beast. Nangong Xuanhu was currently immersed in his grief over the loss of Nangong Xuanhe, and when his subordinates informed him that Nangong Wuk had returned and was walking towards them, Nangong Xuanhu, who was immersed in his grief, widened his eyes, and his anger soared. He slammed his palm on a chair, and his powerful true energy shattered the chair. That little bastard actually dared to come back? My big brother died in the secret realm, so how could that little bastard still be alive? Nangong Xuanhu's killing intent soared as he walked out of the hall with his subordinates. Nangong Wuk leisurely walked over from afar. His red hair fluttered in the wind, and it seemed like a burning flame. Nangong Xuanhu's aura surged violently, and every step he took caused the ground to shake. Smoke and dust rose, and his aura soared. Two swaying chains appeared behind him. Nangong Wuk, you still dare to come back to court death? Nangong Xuanhu shouted, and his voice reverberated throughout the Nangong family like a morning bell. Nangong Wan was imprisoned in a small room. The room was very simple, and this roar just happened to reach Nangong Wan's ears. She couldn't help but open her beautiful eyes, and her long eyelashes trembled. Nangong Wuk came back. Could he defeat Nangong Xuanhe and his two brothers? Nangong Wan was somewhat worried, as she didn't know that Nangong Xuanhe and Nangong Xianying were already dead. The corners of Nangong Wuk's mouth curled up, and he calmly looked at Nangong Xuanhu, who had broken through two of the Supreme Being's shackles. However, Nangong Wuk wasn't afraid, as he had also broken through two of the Supreme Being's shackles. Even though he had just broken them, he was still a genius. If he couldn't be arrogant in the same realm as him, then how could he be considered a genius? Even without the heaven and earth obsidian flame, Nangong Wuk still had the confidence to be arrogant. When Nangong Wuk revealed his cultivation, Nangong Xuanhu was startled. This little bastard actually broke through another Supreme Being's shackle. Seemed like this lad had obtained quite a bit of benefits in the secret grounds. When Nangong Xuanhu thought of this, sorrow welled up in his heart. His elder brother, Nangong Xuanhe, had died miserably in the secret realm, while Nangong Wuk had obtained a fortuitous encounter, allowing his cultivation to advance. Comparing oneself to others was really infuriating. The more it was like this, the more Nangong Xuanhu wanted to kill Nangong Wuk. Die! With a loud shout, Nangong Xuanhu rushed out. Nangong Wuk's gaze turned cold. It was time to settle some scores. Kill! Just like that, the two of them fought without any fancy moves. True chi gushed out, and chi rumbled. Chains of true energy swayed in the air as the two of them fought. Every punch they threw caused the ground to tremble. The Nangong family's guards, who were watching the fight, were all frightened out of their wits. They didn't dare to join the fight. A fight of this level wasn't something they could participate in. The only thing they could do was to watch from afar and wait for the final outcome. Cloud Mist Restaurant. There was a long queue, and many customers entered the restaurant in high spirits. They discovered that the beautiful woman with long black hair had unexpectedly become a waitress of the restaurant, and this made many customers excited. However, Yu's indifference, which prevented strangers from entering, made many people apprehensive. However, the thrill she gave them made them even more excited. They surrounded Yu and chatted nonstop. Their gazes were unceasingly sweeping across Yu's exquisite body, especially her fair and straight beautiful legs, which attracted many people's gazes. Yu coldly stood in her original position, and as her gaze swept across this group of people, her pitch-black eyes became even more profound. She wasn't used to such greedy gazes, and she didn't like them either. Black, true energy slowly surged out of her body, and as she opened her red lips, ice-cold words drifted out. Order the dishes, or get lost. Her words were always concise and to the point. Her ice-cold attitude made the customers even more excited. The aloof goddess was simply intoxicating. Compared to Nangong Wan's gentleness and charm, Yu's aloofness and elegance made the customers feel even more curious and excited. This kind of aloofness was always able to stimulate their desire to conquer her. A customer laughed and stood up. He moved closer to you, squinted his eyes, and said with a smile, "Order the dishes. Of course, I want to order the dishes. I wonder if the beautiful lady can accompany me for a few cups? Drink a few cups?" Yu's long black hair fluttered in the wind, and her ice-cold eyes turned to meet the gaze of that customer. In the distance, Lord Go, who was snoring under the path-understanding tree, suddenly twitched his nose and opened his drowsy eyes. This was the scene of the customer courting death. He yawned, shook his head, and went back to sleep, taking liberties with a netherworld woman. Who gave you the courage to do so? Pressure. It was as if a towering mountain had suddenly pressed down on him, and the greedy smile on that customer's face froze. In his eyes, the aloofness of the goddess had suddenly turned into that of a demon. The heavy pressure caused his chest to heave up and down, and he found it difficult to breathe. This woman was really terrifying. Nethery raised her slender and fair palm, slowly clutching that diner's neck. Goosebumps appeared all over the customer's body. That goddess's hand was ice-cold, and it was like a block of ice that would never melt. When it came into contact with his skin, he felt as if his skin had lost all feeling. What kind of monster was this? The customer felt as if the shadow of death had shrouded his heart, and the feeling of death caused his whole body to tremble. The surrounding customers were also dumbfounded. They didn't know why a goddess like her had suddenly become so terrifying. "You? Let go of me," the customer said in fear. However, Yu's pitch-black eyes became even darker, and her hand gradually exerted more force, causing that customer's face to turn red. He felt extremely sullen. No matter what, he was still a supreme being expert. Why was he like a helpless child in front of this woman? Where did this woman come from? She was so strong. Why did she become a waiter? Bufong didn't know how strong the netherworld woman's cultivation was, and he wasn't clear about it either. Perhaps only the Lord Go would be able to clearly understand Yu's true strength. Bufong had never seen how many shackles she had severed, and he had never seen Yu display her true strength. However, Bufong didn't care about such things. In any case, this woman was now his waiter. The customer who was being grabbed by the neck by Yu felt as if he was about to die. His life force seemed to be dissipating along with his breathing. Was he really going to die? He had only taken liberties with a woman. Why was he going to die? Why was his life so tragic? In the end, Yu didn't kill him. Just when that customer was about to faint, she released her hand. The diner landed on the ground, gasping for air. His eyes were bloodshot. Without any hesitation, that customer turned around and crawled out of the store. His appearance caused many people to suck in a breath of cold air. Yu's ice-cold gaze swept past everyone. It was as if a cold winter wind had blown past them, and everyone felt a chill in their hearts. "Boss, give me a plate of egg fried rice. Sweet and sour ribs. Give me a plate of delicious sweet and sour ribs. We came to this restaurant to eat. What are you doing? Give me a plate of Buddha jumps over-the-wall soup." When the customers met Yu's gaze, their hearts trembled, and they shouted in a righteous manner. This woman was too terrifying. If they wanted to take liberties with her, they would have to consider whether they were still alive or not. With an expressionless face, she memorized the names of the dishes ordered by these people. Then, she turned around and strode toward the kitchen with her fair and long legs. Her sparkling feet stepped on the ground. When she reached the window, Bufong looked at Yu's cold and beautiful face. However, we didn't move an inch and didn't tell Bufong what the customers had ordered. Her pitch-black eyes turned, and Yu looked at Bufong. Then, she suddenly turned around and left. Bufong was dumbfounded. What was going on? However, compared to Bufong, the customers were really dumbfounded. Yu's departure made them heave a sigh of relief. However, before they could relax, that woman came back again. This time, the storm was even more violent. Yu's long black hair fluttered in the wind, and her ice-cold words drifted out of her mouth. Repeat the names of the dishes you ordered. The customers were stunned. In the next moment, they felt an ice-cold, killing, intent lock onto their bodies. Damn it! How could ordering a dish put their lives in danger? You can't remember the names of the dishes, so you can't blame us. The customers wanted to cry, but when they saw Yu's ice-cold gaze, they held back their tears. The customers repeated the names of the dishes one more time. Yu's eyes flickered. She raised her slender hand and counted with her fingers as she memorized the names of the dishes. After she remembered everything, she turned around and returned to the window. Egg fried rice. 2 servings. Sweet and sour ribs. 3 servings. Buddha jumps over the wall soup. 1 servings. Red braised meat. 3 servings. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth couldn't help but twitch as he looked at Nethery, who was counting the names of the dishes with her fingers. Even someone as powerful as the Netherworld woman couldn't remember the names of the dishes. He recalled Ouyang Xiaoi, who was reciting the names of the dishes as if she was singing. There was no harm in comparison. After she finished reciting the names of the dishes, Yu stared at Bu Fong. "Oh, okay. I'm done cooking, and I'll place the dishes here. You just need to take them away," Bu Fong said. Yu nodded her head, but she didn't seem to understand. She turned her head and looked at the customers in the distance. The customers were startled. "Don't make a fuss. We won't tease you." The customers were frightened out of their wits. Yu retracted her gaze and calmly stood by the window. When Bu Fong finished cooking the first dish of egg fried rice, he placed it by the window. Yu looked at the piping hot egg fried rice, and her pitch-black eyes lit up. Bu Fong was taken aback. When he saw Yu's bright eyes, the corners of his mouth twitched. He suddenly had a bad premonition. Chapter 475. Smoke and dust rose into the air, and when the wind blew, the mottled rocks on the ground were blown away. In the Nangong family's courtyard, intense true energy fluctuations were fluctuating, causing the wind to become extremely sharp. When the wind brushed past people's faces, they would feel a stab of pain. The ground was full of potholes, and the broken bricks were scattered everywhere. Nangong Wuk was gasping for breath. The 2 shackles on his back were swaying back and forth, emitting a powerful aura. His fiery red hair fluttered in the wind like a real flame. He slowly took a step forward, causing the rocks on the ground to creak. The ground in the distance caved in, and Nangong Xuanhu's body was lying on the ground. His gaze was sluggish, and his aura was dispirited as he looked at the sky. "I already said that I came here to settle the debt. You 3 brothers caused chaos in my Nangong family, and your crimes are unforgivable. You should have guessed your fate." Nangong Wuk was gasping for breath as he spoke coldly. Although he was funny at times, he was still quite dignified when he was serious. Nangong Wuk coldly looked at Nangong Xuanhu as he dragged him out of the rubble. Nangong Xuanhu, who was bleeding from the corners of his mouth, cut a sorry figure, suddenly started laughing. He coughed blood while laughing. "Nangong Wuk, did you think that everything would end after you took back the Nangong family?" A crazed expression appeared in Nangong Xuanhu's eyes. "It's useless. Without Nangong Wantian and us 3 brothers, the Nangong family in Heavenly Mist City will soon be devoured by the Zhang family and the Lin family, and not even their bones will be left. Your fate will not be any better than mine." Nangong Xuanhu laughed crazily. Nangong Wuk's complexion became gloomy as he took a deep breath. He punched Nangong Xuanhu's face and sent him flying, crashing into the ground. Blood splattered everywhere. "Don't worry, the Nangong family won't decline in my hands," Nangong Wuk said resolutely. Then, he turned to look at the terrified guards beside him. "From now on, I'm the Nangong family's patriarch. Everyone has to listen to me," Nangong Wuk said. How could those guards dare to refute him? Nangong Xuanhe and his 2 brothers were either dead or heavily injured. Only the crippled Nangong Xuanhu remained. As guards, they naturally chose to support Nangong Wuk. "Very good. Throw this old dog into prison." When our Nangong family is at its peak, we'll let this old dog have a good look." The guards' hearts shuddered, but they still complied. They swarmed over Nangong Xuanhu, whose cultivation had been crippled by Nangong Wuk, and threw him into prison. Nangong Wuk rubbed his chest, and his face slightly distorted. He squinted his eyes and looked into the distance. It was just as Nangong Xuanhu had said. It would be extremely difficult for the Nangong family to gain a foothold in the heavenly mist city after losing so many experts. The Lin family and the Zhang family would never let go of this fat piece of meat that was the Nangong family. Moreover, that wasn't all. Many disciples of first-rate forces had died in the secret realm. The Grand Baron sect, Wind and Thunder Pavilion, Puppet sect, and other powerful forces would send their experts to heavenly mist city. As for the Nangong family, who possessed the secret realm's teleportation array, they would definitely bear the brunt of the wrath of these forces. This was truly a headache. You stretched out her slender hand and picked up the bowl of steaming egg-fried rice, which was emitting a fragrant aroma. "Just serve it to the customer who ordered the dish," Bufong said as he looked at you. You nodded, but her gaze didn't leave the egg-fried rice. She moved her delicate face closer to the egg-fried rice, and the steaming hot air blew on her face, causing her pale complexion to become slightly flushed. Then she stuck out her tongue and licked the egg-fried rice. Immediately, the scalding rice entered her mouth. The rich fragrance of the egg-fried rice suddenly burst forth in Yu's mouth, and the fragrance caused her eyes to light up. It was simply too delicious. You licked her lips, and her eyes lit up. Bufong looked through the window at Yu, who was licking the egg-fried rice, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. As expected, this woman was still a little unreliable as a waitress. When you placed the blue and white porcelain plate in front of the customer was dumbfounded. That customer looked at the egg-fried rice he ordered. When there was less than a third of it left, he turned his head to look at Nethery. That outrageously beautiful woman was staring at the blue and white porcelain plate in front of him with her eyes shining. There were even grains of rice at the corner of her mouth. Did she have to be like this? The customer wanted to cry, but no tears came out. However, when he thought of the woman's terrifying might, he didn't dare to say anything. "Beauty, I'll give you the rest of the egg-fried rice." "Give me a new one," the customer said as he endured the pain in his heart. A bowl of egg-fried rice cost 10 crystals. It was even more expensive than ordinary elixirs. When you heard the customer's words, she looked at him in astonishment and discovered that his eyes were filled with sincerity. Without saying anything, she grabbed the blue and white porcelain plate and stuffed the rest of the egg-fried rice in her mouth. Although the essence contained in the egg-fried rice was very little, it tasted good. The dragon blood rice also tasted good, so you chose the latter between the heavenly treasures and the dragon blood rice. Now that there was another delicious dish in front of her, she definitely wouldn't give it up. After finishing the egg-fried rice, you wiped her red lips in satisfaction. That tender and beautiful red lips, because they were stained with oil, seemed to flicker under the illumination of the light. It was rather charming. Many of the customers were stunned when they saw this. "You come here." Bufong's indifferent voice rang out. He leaned on the kitchen door frame and looked at you helplessly. Like a child who was caught stealing candy, you suddenly felt a little flustered and uneasy. However, Bufong didn't say too much. He only explained to you the things to take note of when serving the dishes and emphasized on not stealing. You should have eaten her fill, so she coldly nodded her head. Next, the rest of the dishes were accurately served to each customer's table, which made Bufong quite satisfied. You, who had gotten used to her role, seemed to like this job, and she quickly got into the zone. Every time a dish was served, she couldn't help but lick her lips, subconsciously wanting to steal a bite. For you, this was really a kind of torture. If Ouyang Xiaoyi saw Yu's state, she would definitely be very pleased and nod her head. Who didn't go through this in the past? The day's business quickly came to an end. When the last customer left the store, Bufong closed the bronze door. He pulled out a chair and sat down, resting for a while. You walked around the store barefooted, as if she was a little curious about the things in the store. After walking around for a long time, she obediently looked for a seat and sat down. She blinked her pitch-black eyes and stared at Bufong. "Bufong, I'm hungry," you said. Bufong was taken aback. Lord Go had already arrived beside Bufong. He raised his eyes and said, "Lord Go is also hungry. Didn't this plump dog sleep as soon as it came back? It didn't even move, yet it was already hungry. Was it a dog or a pig?" Bufong was somewhat speechless. He stood up and walked toward the kitchen. The Netherworld woman also stood up and followed behind Bufong. However, just as she was about to enter the kitchen, Bufong stopped her. "The kitchen is an important place, and it's forbidden to enter. You can go anywhere except the kitchen," Bufong said solemnly. The Netherworld woman didn't really understand him, so she nodded her head to show that it didn't matter. As long as there was food, everything would be fine. As such, the Netherworld woman sat back in her seat. Bufong went to the kitchen and took out the dragon blood rice. He skillfully cooked a portion of dragon blood rice soaked in crystal source purple essence and a portion of sweet and sour dragon ribs soaked in crystal source purple essence. After he finished cooking, Bufong walked out of the kitchen with a porcelain plate in his hand. Lord Go and the Netherworld woman were already impatient, and they looked at Bufong with the same expression on their faces. "This is use." Bufong placed the dragon blood rice in front of the Netherworld woman. "This is Blackus." The sweet and sour dragon ribs was placed in front of Lord Go. The aroma and steam spread out in spirals, and it looked somewhat enshrouded under the light. Lord Go couldn't bear it any longer, and he gobbled down the porcelain plate and started eating. After eating just a piece of meat, Lord Go couldn't help but squint his eyes, and he wagged his tail as he savored the rich flavor of the sweet and sour ribs. It was too blissful. As expected, only Bufong's sweet and sour ribs were authentic. After such a long time, he was finally able to eat delicious sweet and sour ribs. The Netherworld woman grabbed a handful of dragon blood rice and stuffed it into her mouth. Bufong furrowed his brows when he saw this. He went to the kitchen and took out a porcelain spoon. He passed it to you and told her to scoop up some rice and eat it. You stared at the porcelain spoon for a long time before tossing it to the side. She continued stuffing the rice into her mouth with her hands. She ate happily, and her mouth was covered with grease. She didn't look like a beautiful woman at all. Of course, she looked much better than Lord Go, who ate the porcelain plate. Bufong felt somewhat helpless. It seemed like teaching the Netherworld woman how to use a spoon would be an arduous task. Munch. The interior of the store was brightly lit, and Lord Dog and the Netherworld woman were happily eating their delicacies. The sound of their mouths slapping could be heard coming from within the store, and it reverberated in the surroundings. As night fell, 2 crescent moons hung in the sky, and they emitted a gentle radiance that resembled a fine veil. It was as gentle as water, and it made one's heart feel at peace. "Bufong, boy, your culinary skills have improved. This sweet and sour ribs." "Woof. Little girl, don't snatch Lord Go's sweet and sour ribs. I'll just eat one piece and have a taste." The Netherworld woman's cold voice resounded. "Woof, do you want to fight? Didn't we agree to eat one piece? Little girl, are you trying to cause trouble?" Bufong looked at Blackie, who was protecting his porcelain bowl, and the Netherworld woman, who was staring at the porcelain bowl under Lord Go's paw. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. As long as you two are happy, it's fine. Now, he would have to worry about the Netherworld woman's sleep. Chapter 476. Where should he arrange for the Netherworld woman to stay? Bufong sat on a chair and looked at the Netherworld woman, who was happily fighting over sweet and sour ribs with the Lord Go. He felt a headache coming on. There were only 2 rooms in the store. One belonged to Bufong, while the other belonged to Yang Meiji. If he arranged for the Netherworld woman to stay in Yang Meiji's room, what if that tall woman suddenly came back? Although that woman rarely came back, it was better to be safe than sorry. If he were to occupy her room and was discovered, it would be very embarrassing. Should he arrange for you to stay in my room? Bufong pondered for a moment. then decided to forget about it. You smelly girl, if you try to snatch the Lord Go's sweet and sour ribs again, the Lord Go will be angry. Blackie wagged his tail and angrily glared at the Netherworld woman, who was holding a piece of sweet and sour ribs with her fair and slender hands. The Netherworld woman licked her red lips and emitted a seductive aura. Then, she stuffed the sweet and sour ribs into her mouth. She slurped her food noisily. The delicious sweet and sour ribs made the Netherworld woman happy, both physically and mentally. Little Black felt that its whole body was not good, as if something had broken with a cracking sound. How infuriating! He suddenly realized that he had dug a pit for himself by tricking this girl into coming back. This lass was also a big foodie. Did you see how much food she ate today? Not only did she not eat her fill, but she also wanted to snatch his sweet and sour ribs. Was there any reason left? Did the Lord Go think it was easy for him to eat a piece of sweet and sour ribs? However, Blackie was also helpless. He couldn't just slap this girl away with his paw. After all, he was the one who tricked her into coming back. Even if he had to hold back his tears, he would have to swallow it. The Lord Go looked at the Netherworld woman, who was happily munching on the sweet and sour ribs with narrowed eyes. He let out a bark and angrily gobbled down the sweet and sour ribs on the porcelain plate. Soon, the sweet and sour ribs on the porcelain plate entered the Lord Go's mouth. The Lord Go's mouth bulged and his eyes widened. He stared at the Netherworld woman and chewed on the sweet and sour ribs. Bufong was speechless. This stingy dog, where's his integrity, snatching food from a woman? When the Netherworld woman saw that Lord Go had finished eating all the sweet and sour ribs, she expressionlessly picked up the porcelain plate on the table and stuck out her tongue to lick it. The porcelain plate was stained with the juice of the sweet and sour ribs. The taste was delicious. Lord Go almost choked to death. Was there a need to be so deranged? Even the liquor was not spared. Bufong was also stunned. All right, just pretend that he didn't say anything earlier. This woman is too crazy. The Netherworld woman placed the porcelain plate down and leaned back comfortably on the chair. She was so lazy that she looked like a docile black cat. Her voluptuous body moved up and down, and her breathing was accompanied by a different kind of allure. Her long black hair spread out and covered half of the Netherworld woman's face. Her faintly discernible face was breathtakingly beautiful. After the Lord Go swallowed the sweet and sour ribs in his mouth, he stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. He glanced at you, who was lazily leaning back on the chair, and snorted. Then, he took graceful cat-like steps and returned to the path understanding tree, where he fell asleep. Sleeping after eating was the life that the Lord Go loved the most. This was also the reason why the Lord Go was so fat. The Netherworld woman opened her squinted eyes and looked at Bufong. She pouted her lips and expressed the happiness in her heart. Then, under Bufong's dumbfounded gaze, she stood up. Pitch black, true energy spread out from the Netherworld woman's fair palm. Then, she waved her hand, and the pitch-black Netherworld ship, which emanated an ancient aura, appeared in midair. With a loud bang, the Netherworld ship landed beside the Lord Go. It gave rise to a strong gale, which caused the Lord Go's fur to flutter. Under Yu's control, the Netherworld ship shrunk a lot and landed right in front of the Path Understanding tree. What did this woman want to do? Bufong was taken aback and looked at the Netherworld woman in confusion. The Netherworld woman walked to the front of the Netherworld ship. Her long black hair reached her waist, and she turned around to face Bufong. She clasped her hands together and nodded slightly. Then, she stepped into the ship with her sparkling feet. The corners of Bufong's mouth twitched. As expected, he had thought too much about it. Originally, he was having a headache thinking about how to arrange things for this woman. Now, it seemed like he didn't need to think about it anymore. Even breathing sounds came from the Netherworld ship. Bufong stood up and picked up the blue and white porcelain plates on the table. Then, he slowly walked toward the kitchen. As soon as he entered the kitchen, the lights in the store were extinguished, and darkness enveloped the store. After Bufong threw the porcelain plates into the dishwasher prepared by the system, he stretched his body and patted Xiao Bai's plump belly. Then, he turned around and went upstairs. After washing his body in the bathroom, he shook his wet hair and leaned against the window. He looked at the beautiful night scenery of heavenly mist city, which made him feel quite happy. The night passed silently. The next day, when a morning sun shone through the window and shone on Bu Feng's face, it brought about a warm and comfortable feeling. Bu Feng slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were a little hazy, and he yawned. Bu Feng stood up and used a velvet rope to tie up his long hair. Then, he slowly walked out of the room after washing his face and rinsing his mouth. However, just as he went downstairs, at the corner between the store and the kitchen, Bu Feng suddenly froze. He turned his head and saw a pitch-black figure standing there, staring at him with wide eyes. What the hell? Startled, Bu Feng jumped up and took a step back. It was only at this moment that he realized that the figure was Yu. Why did she scare him so early in the morning? Bu Feng was somewhat speechless. When a netherworld woman saw Bu Feng, her eyes slightly curved. Then, she shook her head, causing her long black hair to flutter in the wind. She turned around and walked into the store. Then, she sat down on her seat and straightened her back. Was she preparing to eat breakfast? The corner of Bu Feng's mouth twitched. This woman was quite self-aware. Bu Feng glanced around and saw that Blackie, the lazy dog, had actually gotten up for the first time. Its paws were on the table, and it was standing on the chair with its tongue hanging out. These two gluttons, Bu Feng chuckled and turned around to enter the kitchen. He didn't immediately start cooking. Instead, he held the dragon bone kitchen knife and started practicing the Overlord 13 blades. After completing the temporary task, Bu Feng's true energy cultivation had increased by a lot. However, there were still some days before he would break through to the divine realm. It was not a bad idea to practice the Overlord 13 blades during this period of time. It was the same as when he practiced the meteor cutting technique. If a chef wanted to maintain his culinary skills, he would need to practice every day. Practice makes perfect, and this was an extremely important condition for a chef. Holding the dragon bone kitchen knife, Bu Feng picked up Xiaopi, who was lying on his shoulder, and placed it on the stove. Xiaopi, who was still somewhat confused, looked at Bu Feng with its compound eyes. Bu Feng brandished the dragon bone kitchen knife, and his aura changed unceasingly. Then, he pointed the knife at Shrimpy. Xiaopi was indifferent to Bu Feng's knife aura. Its numerous small legs crawled around on the stove, and it started running around chaotically. Well, the Overlord 13 blades wasn't something that could be rushed. Bu Feng put away the kitchen knife and picked up Xiaopi, who was running around chaotically, and threw it on his shoulder. Xiaopi, who was lying on Bu Feng's shoulder, became much more obedient. It started spitting bubbles. After practicing his cutting technique for a while, Bu Feng started his daily cooking practice. He took out the supreme beast meat, cut it into pieces, and prepared to cook sweet and sour ribs. He took out the black turtle constellation wok and spat out a mouthful of golden 10,000 bestial flames. The temperature in the kitchen rose. Then, he poured some oil into the wok and started stir-frying it. After a short while, a rich aroma wafted out of the kitchen. The eyes of Yu and Lord Go, who were sitting in the store, lit up, and they became excited. When the noises in the kitchen stopped, a human and a dog turned their heads toward the direction of the kitchen. A slender figure slowly walked out of the shadows of the kitchen. He was holding two fragrant dishes in his hands. Black is sweet and sour ribs and used dragon blood rice. Bu Feng placed the two dishes in front of them and said calmly. After he finished, Bu Feng returned to the kitchen. Very quickly, he walked out of the kitchen with a steamer of golden shumai in his hands. The netherworld woman grabbed the bowl of dragon blood rice with her slender fingers and stuffed it into her mouth. She felt that these days were too wonderful. She could eat dishes filled with spiritual essence every day, compared to the miserable life she had in the secret realm, where she could only eat one meal after another. This kind of life was even more comfortable than the life in the netherworld. Lord Go was eating the sweet and sour ribs happily. He was eating faster today because he was afraid that the netherworld woman would try to snatch his food from him again. Bu Feng elegantly picked up a golden shumai with his chopsticks. The golden shumai was soaked in boiling gravy. Bufang used his chopsticks to make a small opening, and the rich and fragrant gravy immediately flowed out from the opening. Bufang quickly sucked the soup into his mouth. The mellow and rich fragrance that entered his mouth made Bufang's pores open. It was no wonder that Lord Go and the Netherworld woman were eating so happily. It turned out that a dish that contained the crystal source purple essence would raise its taste to a whole new level. The taste of this golden shumai was much better than what Bufang had cooked in the past. This was simply unimaginable. After he finished sucking the soup, Bufang unhurriedly stuffed the golden shumai into his mouth and started chewing it. The taste of pork mixed with the fragrance of the rice lingered in Bufang's mouth. When he swallowed it, his entire stomach felt warm. Bufang exhaled lightly and felt somewhat satisfied. All of a sudden, Bufang was taken aback. He saw that the Netherworld woman had already finished eating the dragon blood rice, and she turned her head to look at his golden shumai. Then, without waiting for Bufang to say anything, the Netherworld woman grabbed a piece of golden shumai and stuffed it into her mouth. She wasn't afraid of the heat at all. Munch! Munch! The more she ate, the brighter her eyes became. She discovered a new delicacy. Was this place heaven? The Netherworld woman's rosy lips, which were stained with oil, were filled with charm, and she squinted her eyes in delight. The corners of Bufang's mouth curled up. This gluttonous woman, picking up another piece of golden shumai, Bufang happily ate it. Lord Go rejoiced in other people's misfortune as he looked at Bufang. It was really good that this girl didn't steal his sweet and sour ribs today. After swallowing the last piece of sweet and sour ribs, Lord Go strode elegantly like a cat back to the path-understanding tree and went to sleep. When Bufang finished eating the second piece of golden shumai, he was completely dumbfounded. He looked at you, who was holding a piece of golden shumai in her left hand and another in her right hand, and she was still chewing on a piece of golden shumai in her mouth. Bufang finally understood the pain Lord Go felt the day before. This woman could really eat. After a long time, Bufang, who was holding a piece of golden shumai with his chopsticks, froze in the air. He expressionlessly looked at the empty steamer basket. Chapter 477. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, the store began its daily business. Bufang opened the store's bronze gate, and a heavy creaking sound echoed in the surroundings. As the gate was opened, sunlight shone into the store and warmly shone on Bufang's body. Bufang couldn't help but squint his eyes. There were already many people outside the store. The elixir stores in the area were all selling elixirs before the Cloud Mist restaurant opened for business. Because it was a small store, the prices of their elixirs were extremely low, which attracted many customers. Even though business was difficult, it wasn't a loss. Of course, some of the customers who came to this area were just here to buy elixirs. Even though the Cloud Mist restaurant was already famous in Heavenly Mist City, most people didn't know about it. After all, Heavenly Mist City wasn't small. The area where the Cloud Mist restaurant was located was under the jurisdiction of the Nangong family. In Heavenly Mist City, other than the Nangong family, there were many other big families. For example, the Lin family, the Zhang family, the City Lord's Mansion, and some other small families. These families formed the Heavenly Mist City, which was a developed city. As a restaurant in a small area, the Cloud Mist restaurant's reputation wasn't that great. Compared to some high-grade elixir stores, its reputation wasn't just a little bit lower. For example, the top-grade elixir store in Heavenly Mist City, the Flowing Cloud House. If this name was mentioned in Heavenly Mist City, everyone would know about it. Not only in Heavenly Mist City, but even among the three great pill cities of the Pill Palace, the Flowing Cloud House was second to none. Temporary mission. Host, please spread the name of the Cloud Mist restaurant throughout Heavenly Mist City within 3 months. Make a household name. Mission reward. Kung Pao chicken cooking method. Bufang squinted his eyes and enjoyed the lazy feeling of the warm gaze on his body. The solemn voice of the system resounded in his mind. On such a beautiful morning, the system had unexpectedly given him a temporary quest. It was simply too unkind. Bu Fong pursed his lips and let out a deep breath. This mission wasn't simple. Within 3 months, he had to make the Cloud Mist restaurant's name spread throughout the entire Heavenly Mist City. Moreover, he had to make it known to every single household. This difficulty wasn't something that could be achieved by simply setting up a stinky tofu stall in front of the restaurant. Bu Fong also felt a slight headache. The restaurant was already weak in Heavenly Mist City, and if he wanted to complete the temporary mission, it meant that Bu Fong had to make the Cloud Mist restaurant into a top-notch elixir store that was not inferior to the Flowing Cloud House. This was not a small amount of work, and Bu Fong really had no clue at all. Owner Bu, are you starting work? The owner of an elixir store that was closest to the restaurant saw Bu Fong open the bronze door and immediately greeted him with a smile. Bu Fong nodded, then turned around and walked into the store. The elixir store's owner squinted his eyes and smiled. He put away the elixir jade bottles placed on the elixir store and eagerly followed the stream of people into the store. Even though there weren't many types of dishes in the store, the taste was undeniably good. Most importantly, many people who had eaten Owner Bu's dishes realized that they were actually similar to elixirs in that they were different methods. Not only was it delicious, but it could also strengthen the true energy in one's body. To these people, this was simply the most wonderful thing. The reason they bought elixirs was to strengthen their cultivation. Now that they had a chance to eat delicious food and strengthen their cultivation, why wouldn't they cherish it? With the increase in the number of customers, the store gradually became crowded. Many customers excitedly came to order dishes. After you ate and drank to your fill, she naturally had to start her work. Although this woman was good at eating, she wasn't stupid and knew what her job was. However, her cold and aloof appearance still attracted the attention of many customers. Although many customers had suffered losses the day before, not all of them suffered losses. Some of them were still stunned by Yu's peerless beauty. After all, she was a beauty that wasn't inferior to the Nangong goddess. How could they not look at her? However, there seemed to be a lot of rumors about Nethery among the customers. They knew that it wasn't wise to take liberties with this beautiful waitress, so they just looked at you with admiration. Since no one came to provoke her, you wouldn't cause trouble for no reason. Her way of thinking was quite simple. She just wanted to complete the tasks that Bu Fong assigned to her every day and then have food to eat. Her ideals were quite simple. After the Netherworld woman spent some time getting used to her new role, she gradually got used to reporting the names of her dishes. This made Bu Fong quite satisfied. The business of the store gradually went on the right track. In the Nangong family's courtyard, Nangong Wan was wearing a pink dress. Her fiery red hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall. Her exquisite face was filled with astonishment. Her red lips were slightly parted, revealing a look of disbelief. Did you say that old dog Nangong Xuanha died? Nangong Xuanha, the culprit who caused the internal strife in the Nangong family, died just like that? How many days had it been? Nangong Xuanha isn't the only one. Nangong Xining is dead as well. I also crippled Nangong Xuanhu. Now, I have finally taken back the Nangong family. Nangong Wuk raised his head proudly, like a proud rooster. Nangong Wan looked at her brother in astonishment. She naturally knew what kind of person Nangong Wuk was. Could it be that his experience this time had enlightened him? If that was the case, it would be a good thing. All right, little Wan, didn't that old dog Nangong Xuanha arrange an engagement for you? Don't worry. That sissy Mu Chanfeng died in the secret realm. You are no longer bound by an engagement, Nangong Wuk said with a smile. When she heard this, Nangong Wan's beautiful eyes lit up for the first time. Is that true? Is that Mu Chanfeng dead? That's right. Something happened in the secret realm, and many people died. Your brother, I experienced countless hardships and dangers. I killed countless enemies and survived, Nangong Wuk said solemnly. His conscience didn't hurt at all. Of course. Brother-in-law helped me a lot. Brother-in-law is really good. Don't you want to reconsider? Brother-in-law? What brother-in-law? Nangongwan was startled. Who are you talking about? Old Boo, he's not ugly and he can cook. Isn't he a good person? Nangongwuk encouraged. Nangongwan's face flushed. She was still too young. How could she believe that Nangongwuk, this clown, will become normal? If you say one more word, I will use a needle to sew your mouth shut, Nangongwan threatened. Nangongwuk's expression stiffened. Nangongwan snorted and turned around to leave. After walking for a while, she seemed to have thought of something. She turned her head and asked, "By the way, is my elixir store still there? I want to continue selling elixirs." Nangongwuk looked at Nangongwan, who was twisting her waist and disappearing. Nangongwuk curled his lips and said, "What a hypocritical lass. Selling elixirs?" She must have gone to Old Boo's store to eat the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. She also wanted to meet Old Boo. Pass down my orders. Tell the people in charge of the various industries to gather in the Nangong family's building. We will hold a family meeting. Nangongwuk's temperament changed when he saw Nangongwan disappear. The guard's face turned cold. He nodded and retreated. The Nangong family's building. There were many chairs made of sandalwood in the huge meeting room. Many old men were sitting on those chairs. They were the people in charge of the various industries of the Nangong family. Some of them were deacons, while others were elders. If Nangongwuk wanted to stabilize the family, he would have to stabilize these people first. However, after Nangongwuk went through this matter, he had grown up. His aura became more stable. Many of the elders looked at Nangongwuk with trembling eyes. They felt that this meeting wasn't going to be good. Many of them knew about the grudge between Nangongwuk and Nangong Xuanhe and his two brothers. Many of them had helped Nangong Xuanhe. Therefore, they were quite nervous. They felt that Nangongwuk wouldn't dare to touch them. After all, they controlled the Nangong family's production chain. Nangongwuk looked around at everyone. When everyone was present, he leaned on his chair and looked at them with an ice-cold gaze. When Nangong Xuanhe, that old dog, extracted the heaven and earth obsidian flame from my body, all of you were there. As expected, the hearts of the Nangong family members trembled. Their complexions became unsightly. All of you should know that I crippled Nangong Xuanhe, and that old dog, Nangong Xuanhe, died in the secret realm. Now, I'm the head of the Nangong family. Is there anyone who isn't convinced? No one stood out. After all, Nangongwuk was the rightful successor of the Nangong family. Since all of you admit that I am the head of the Nangong family, I will settle my debt with all of you today. Powerful true energy surged out of Nangongwuk's body. Two chains swayed behind him. Heaven and earth's pressure spread out, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. The guards rushed into the hall. The ice-cold swords emitted from them caused the hearts of all the elders to shiver. Nangongwuk had really grown up. Nangongwan arrived in front of the Cloud Mist restaurant. Along the way, she saw that the elixir stores were still quite empty. This didn't change even after she disappeared for a long time. The elixir store's business had probably been snatched away by the restaurant. Owner Boo's culinary skills were really shocking. When Nangongwan thought about the Buddha jumps over the wall, soup cooked by Bu Fong, she felt a little greedy. The taste of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup was really delicious. Moreover, it could help her cultivation increase. This was really a pleasant surprise. She could cultivate while enjoying delicious food. It was like getting the best of both worlds. Nangongwan arrived at her elixir store. Since she hadn't been managing it for a long time, her store had become somewhat dilapidated. It was even covered with a thick layer of dust. She raised her hand and waved it, causing the dust to fill the air. Nangongwan coughed several times. She felt somewhat uncomfortable. Forget it. I will find someone to clean it up at night. I will go to Owner Boo's restaurant to eat. Nangongwan shook her red hair. Her slender and beautiful legs strode toward Owner Boo's restaurant. Since Nangongwan had arrived quite late, there weren't many customers left. Many of them had eaten their fill and left in satisfaction. Tisk TSK. The aloof beauty in Owner Boo's store is really beautiful. I have never seen such a beautiful woman before. What nonsense are you spouting? Our goddess Nangong isn't bad. What do you know? Goddess Nangong's temperament is inferior to that Owner Boo's beauty. Nangong Wan's body stiffened when she heard the discussions of the surrounding customers. Her red lips, which were covered by a veil, curled into a cold and arrogant arc. Owner Boo's beauty? Interesting. I really want to see her. Chapter 478. Within the Nangong family's building, the atmosphere was somewhat gloomy. The bloodbath didn't last long, and the smell of blood in the hall quickly dissipated. Nangong Wuk was still sitting in his seat, but at this moment, no one dared to look down on him. Family head, our Nangong family has just recovered from the internal strife, and the Lin and Zhang families have already started to take action. They have already started to invade our businesses. An elder said respectfully and nervously. Family head, the new Magical Hand Conference has already been confirmed to be held in our heavenly mist city. Now, the Pill Palace has already started to take action, and many powerful alchemists and people with special abilities are rushing towards heavenly mist city. We need to immediately report the names of our family's participants. An elder carefully looked at Nangong Wuk. When Nangong Wuk heard this, he was slightly taken aback. The Magical Hand Conference was about to start again. Moreover, this time's Magical Hand Conference was actually going to be held in Heavenly Mist City. This was a little interesting. Heavenly Mist City was really in a precarious situation these days, and all kinds of matters had piled up. This conference couldn't be underestimated. It was the most prestigious event held by the Pill Palace. It wasn't just to raise the status of alchemists. It was also an opportunity for people with special abilities. Although this conference didn't cover the entire Hidden Dragon continent, it covered the entire Pill Palace. The Pill Palace wasn't small, and there were tens of millions of people living in it. There were also tens of thousands of alchemists, and there were even more people with special abilities. The Magical Hand Conference was an event held by the higher-ups of the Pill Palace to increase the fame of alchemists. If an alchemist could get into the top 10 of the conference, his or her fame in the Pill Palace would skyrocket to a terrifying level. After all, this was an event promoted by the Pill Palace. At the same time, this was also an opportunity for people with special abilities. These people with special abilities might not be alchemists. They might be doctors or even poison masters. They would also have the opportunity to display their skills in the grand ceremony, as long as they could achieve the theme of magic hands bring back the spring. Whether it was helping someone break through, healing, or strengthening one's foundation, as long as the effects were satisfactory, they would become the focus of the conference. However, according to the previous situation, most of these people with special abilities were just there to watch the show. After all, how could doctors and poison masters compare to alchemists? One spirit pill was enough to destroy everything. Family head, who should our Nangong family send this time? The elder asked cautiously as he looked at Nangong Wuk, who was deep in thought and had a silly smile on his face. In the past, it had always been Nangong Wuk who had participated. However, now that he was the clan master, would he still participate? This was the doubt in the hearts of the elders. Of course. Why wouldn't I participate? I suddenly feel that this Magical Hand Conference will be very interesting. Not only do I want to participate, but Xiao Wan will also register for it. She has been studying alchemy for a long time, but she has never participated in a formal competition. Today, she will go and try her hand at it, Nangong Wuk said as he clapped his hands. His face was full of excitement. That elder froze for a moment, then nodded his head. Remember this. The City Lord's mansion is about to send someone to invite me over. After all, this is the Magical Hand Conference, and the people in charge of the various clans have to discuss it together. Nangong Wuk stood up and said. He took a few steps forward, and just as he was about to reach the entrance of the building, he suddenly said, Also, although our Nangong family has just experienced internal strife, we are not someone who could be bullied. If the Lin and Zhang families send people to mess with our businesses, don't be afraid. Just fight back. The people in charge were dumbfounded. I will take responsibility for anything that happens, Nangong Wuk said. We can't be cowardly. If we cower, others will take advantage of us. After he finished speaking, Nangong Wuk strode out of the building. When Nangong Wan stepped into the Cloud Mist restaurant, she couldn't help but squint her beautiful eyes when she smelled the fragrance in the air. She raised her slender and fair hand and took off the veil that was covering her face. Her beautiful face was immediately revealed to the air. Her fiery red hair complemented her fair skin. Her charming face carried a tinge of innocence. She was indeed a beauty that could not be imagined. The few remaining customers in the store were all stunned when they saw her. Although the Netherworld woman was beautiful, she was too cold and aloof. She gave people a feeling that she was 1,000 miles away from them. Nangong Wan was very beautiful. Her charming beauty was the most attractive kind of beauty, and it was easy for people to become restless. What the F***CK? It's the Nangong goddess. Why is she here? The internal strife of the Nangong family ended, and the goddess immediately came here? Could it be? Don't talk nonsense. Didn't the Nangong family betroth their goddess to a monstrous alchemist in the Heavenly Pill City? It seems like she still has feelings for the owner boo. TSK, TSK, TSK. The eyes of the customers lit up. They felt that they were really happy in the store. They had delicious food to eat, and delicious food could increase their cultivation. They also had beautiful women to look at. Most importantly, the beautiful women were full of gossip. Nangong Wan's figure swayed, and her slender and plump legs attracted the gazes of the people in the store. She found a place to sit down and raised her left leg, pressing it on top of her right leg. The slit of her long skirt slid down her fair skin, revealing her alluring and beautiful legs. The customers' eyes widened when they saw her. Tap, tap, tap. You walked over as usual. She was getting better at ordering dishes. What do you want to eat? Just order, the Netherworld woman said coldly. Nangong Wan didn't order immediately. Instead, she raised her head, and her red bangs fell on Yu's body. Nangong Wan couldn't help but sigh in admiration when she saw how beautiful the woman in front of her was. She had black hair, black skirt, black eyes, and skin that was even fairer than her own. Nangong Wan felt a sense of inferiority when she saw her. You waited for a long time, but she didn't hear the sound of someone ordering dishes. She furrowed her beautiful brows and looked at the customers. Order dishes. If you don't, then scram. The Netherworld woman didn't have a good temper. She was an arrogant person, and if it wasn't for delicious food, she wouldn't have lowered herself to be a waitress. She could kill the people in front of her with a single slap. Are you the new waitress that Honorable hired? You really have a bad temper, Nangong Wan said indifferently. Her red lips curled up, and a dangerous arc appeared in her eyes. Yu's expressionless face trembled, and it seemed as if she felt a trace of hostility. She looked at the woman in front of her in astonishment. She was very beautiful, but she wasn't as beautiful as her. Ask Ownerbu to come out. I want to order dishes from him alone, Nangong Wan said with a smile. She raised her finger and pointed at her red lips. What did she mean? Did she come here to cause trouble? Yu's gaze became pitch black and deep. As she looked at Nangong Wan, a formless pressure appeared around her. Nangong Wan's pitch-black eyes were reflected in her eyes, and they gradually turned into unfathomable black holes. Nangong Wan felt as if her mind was about to sink into them. Cold sweat drenched Nangong Wan's body, and her body trembled slightly. Pa! All of a sudden, Nangong Wan's mind trembled. When she came back to her senses, she felt as if she had just been fished out of a pool of water. You felt a hand patting her shoulder, and the deep look in her eyes disappeared. You don't cause trouble, Bu Fong said calmly. The Netherworld woman turned her head and looked at Bu Fong expressionlessly. She snorted and walked toward the path understanding tree. She pulled out a chair and sat beside the Lord Go. Nangong Wan breathed heavily, and her towering chest heaved up and down. Her eyes were filled with fright. She had thought that she was going to die a moment ago. It was Bu Fong who saved her. Nangong Wan raised her head and forced a smile onto her face. Honorbu, long time no see. I heard that you saved my brother. That's why I came here personally to thank you. You, who was in the distance, looked at them with her pitch-black eyes. Lord Go yawned, and he lost interest in her after taking a glance at her. What was the use of a beautiful woman? It wasn't as if he could eat her like sweet and sour ribs. On the other hand, the surrounding diners were so excited that their pores bloomed and their eyes shone with curiosity. The Nangong goddess was defeated in the first confrontation between the store's goddess and the store's goddess. This was even more interesting. Chapter 479. Nangong Wuk hummed a tune as he walked through the Nangong family's courtyard. His face was filled with satisfaction. The courtyard's winding paths led to a secluded place, and the environment was excellent. There were all kinds of trees around the courtyard, and the sunlight shone through the gaps between the leaves. It seemed as though it was made of gold, and it shone on the path. All of a sudden, Nangong Wuk's humming came to an abrupt stop. His whole body trembled as though he had been struck by lightning. Wait, did I miss something? Did little Juan go to Old Boo's store? Then, she should have met that terrifying woman, right? Nangong Wuk suddenly thought to himself. Nangong Wuk was the clearest about how terrifying the Netherworld woman was. That frightening pressure, which made him lie on the ground and unable to move at all, still left a lingering fear in his heart even now. If little Juan didn't know what was good for her and provoke that woman, the consequences would be unimaginable. When Nangong Wuk thought about this, he felt a headache coming on. He was so pretentious in front of Nangong, one that he forgot to tell her about such an important matter. He hoped that nothing bad would happen to her. Nangong Wuk didn't care about anything else, so he turned around and left the courtyard. His speed unconsciously increased as he was worried about Wan Wan. Patriarch, the city lord asked you to go to the city lord's mansion to discuss something. An elder, who had just entered the mansion, saw Nangong Wuk and quickly waved his hand to greet him. I have something to do, so help me delay it. Nangong Wuk hurriedly rushed out, and he didn't stop. That elder faintly heard Nangong Wuk's words. Delay it? Why would he delay it? The elder was somewhat dumbfounded. The city lord's mansion had personally sent someone to invite him, yet he just ran away and asked him to delay it. Nangong Wuk was indeed Nangong Wuk. He was as unreliable as ever. At this moment, Nangong Wan's mood had already calmed down. She coquettishly looked at Bu Fong and said with a smile, Owner Bu, what kind of gift do you want? The surrounding diners all shivered. She was too charming. How could they bear the fact that their goddess spoke in such a tone? Bu Fong was flabbergasted as he looked at Nangong Wan. What the hell was this woman up to this time? Why did she have to talk so much when it came to eating? It's nothing. Saving Nangong Wuk was just a matter of convenience. What do you want to eat? Just tell me, Bu Fong said expressionlessly. Indeed, saving Nangong Wuk had been a simple matter. He had only needed a bowl of dragon blood rice, and he hadn't had to go through any hardships or obstacles. If he had needed 100 servings of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup to save Nangong Wuk, Bu Fong would have left without hesitation. 100 servings of Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Bu Fong felt that even if he sold that clown Nangong Wuk, he wouldn't be able to get that many crystals. Nangong Wan still wanted to say something, but her beautiful eyes turned, and she said with a sweet smile, All right, Owner Bu, give me the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Owner Bu's Buddha jumps over the wall soup was absolutely delicious. It was the most delicious dish Nangong Wan had ever eaten. Okay, let's wait, Bu Fong said. After he finished speaking, he turned around and walked toward the kitchen. After Bu Fong's figure disappeared, Nangong Wan's gaze turned toward Yu, who was sitting on a chair in the distance. The gazes of the two women collided in the air, and sparks seemed to flicker. Perhaps this was the rumored hostility of women. The atmosphere in the store suddenly became strange. Although the remaining customers wanted to continue watching the gossip, they had already finished their dishes, and they felt uncomfortable in this atmosphere. Moreover, the cold gaze of the store's goddess, which swept over them from time to time, caused their bodies to tremble, and goosebumps appeared on their skin. It was too frightening. After hesitating for less than 3 seconds, the customers turned around and left the store. Nangong Wan was the only one left in the store, and she was sitting on a chair. After a short while, a rich fragrance wafted out of the kitchen. That fragrance was like silk, and it lingered in the nostrils of people. You serve the dishes. Bufong's voice came from the kitchen's window. You, who was already drooling over the fragrance, immediately stood up when she heard Bufong's voice. She took a step forward, and it seemed as if she had teleported to the front of the window. Bufong looked at the excited Yu in astonishment. What kind of nonsense was this woman planning? After she carried the Buddha jumps over the wall soup away, Yu's eyes lit up. She lowered her head, and she placed her face on the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. She sniffed the fragrance coming from the jar. When Bufong saw Yu's actions, he raised his brows. This woman wouldn't eat the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, right? As if reflecting Bufong's guess, Yu only took a few steps before she lifted the lid of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, which was emitting a golden radiance. A rich fragrance surged out of the jar. Fragrant. It was especially fragrant. Yu's fair and beautiful face became flushed because of the steam coming from the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Nangongwan was dumbfounded as she looked at the beautiful woman. She casually waved her hand and took out a piece of meat from the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. She opened her mouth wide and swallowed the piece of meat that belonged to her. What the hell? Aren't you a waiter? Shouldn't this woman give me the Buddha jumps over the wall soup? Why did she eat it? Nangongwan felt as if her mind was in a mess. She couldn't understand the Netherworld woman's actions. How was this the behavior of a waiter? It was simply a bandit. Nangongwan, who was somewhat angry, stood up from her seat. She wore an ice-cold expression and said, "What are you doing? That's my Buddha jumps over the wall soup." Sizzle. You calmly glanced at Nangongwan with her pitch-black eyes. She raised a jar and drank a mouthful of the soup. A warm current flowed into her stomach, and she couldn't help but let out a breath. It was delicious. She was able to eat a new dish. Bufong, who was leaning against the kitchen's door, rubbed his forehead. He was somewhat speechless. As expected, you started eating again. He had brought back a glutton who could eat even more than the Lord Go. The Lord Go drowsily opened his eyes and glanced at you. He snorted and said, "Nonsense. The Lord Go loves the sweet and sour ribs the most. He doesn't eat ordinary dishes. That lassie can eat even more than the Lord Go." You carried the jar of Buddha jumps over the wall soup and ate as she walked. She walked to Nangongwan's seat and pulled a chair over to sit down. She was still eating without stopping. Nangongwan was so angry that her chest heaved up and down. Her curves were extremely eye-catching. Her beautiful face was so angry that it had turned somewhat pale. "You, little sister." Just when Nangongwan was about to say something, outside the store, a horse howl suddenly rang out. Nangongwan was bewildered, and so was Bufong. Nethery, who was still munching on her food, also looked up. What was going on? Nangongwuk rushed into the store with his arms wide open. His face was filled with grief. However, when he saw Nangongwan's gaze, which seemed as if she was looking at an idiot, he heaved a sigh of relief. It was fine as long as nothing happened. He turned his head and saw you, who was eating the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Nangongwuk's heart trembled. When he saw you, his heart trembled. This woman was extremely terrifying. However, since she was in Ownerbu's store, she would probably restrain herself a little. Nangongwuk heaved a long sigh of relief. However, before he could completely relax, Nangongwan's next words almost caused him to lose his breath. "Ownerbu, this woman is casually eating the dishes ordered by the customers. Aren't you going to say anything? This kind of waitress will affect the store's image. Aren't you going to fire her?" Nangongwan's words stunned everyone. Bufong, you, and even the yawning Lord Go were stunned. Nangongwuk's heart trembled, and his legs became weak. "My little aunt, you don't know anything about the truth. Do you know what kind of terrifying existence you're talking to?" Nangongwuk's heart became cold. He looked at you in fright. As expected, the woman with long black hair shook her hand and stopped eating. She looked at Nangongwan. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.